What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. As you can see, we are in the home of the Hurricanes, Duffy's Tavern on the edge of Coral Gables. Game day eve on a Thursday as we get ready for Louisville and really the next season for the Miami Hurricanes. You had the Rivals state championship season. Now you got ACC season, something Miami has not won ever. Hoping this is the year and is done in dominant fashion. I'm here with Peter Rees in his home away from home. Peter, how we doing?
Doing great, man. Obviously excited for tomorrow, but excited for today. These live shows from Duffy's, the lights are always a little bit brighter here, and we got our boy Steve Kim joining us here in just a moment. But yeah, man, vibes are good. The energy's great. I think the team is they're rested up. They're ready to go, man. They're ready to go hit someone. So.
Yeah, and listen, if someone hits you, someone you care about, might need an attorney, call Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys, 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Steve, hop in here.
Morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Listen, you caused a lot of clicks, a lot of controversy with your question.
I wouldn't say there was
White.
much controversy, or like it was jubilation. I would
Yeah.
say there was no controversy there. I'll bring it up as you talk about
By the way,
it.
don't hit us with copyright for playing your show.
No. You got full permission. Trust me.
But
You're
walk
good.
us through for those who haven't seen it or want to know the story behind the clip with Dana White and yourself.
Well, I do a weekly boxing show with Mario Lopez called the 3 Knockdown Rule. And we've been trying to get Dana White, who's actually pretty friendly or very friendly with Mario Lopez. We finally were able to get our schedules to align. And we had an interview set up. There's a lot of stuff going on in boxing with Dana, with TKO, Zuffa, Endeavor. He's going to be a player in that space. So we wanted to get him on to talk about his plans for boxing, his overall general thoughts on the business. And then Mario said, as we formulated the interview, like, hey, Steve, why don't we come up with some fun questions to get to know his personality, his other interests, something that could lighten the mood at the end. So I came up with some questions, and me and Mario agreed on it. And I said, you know what? I want to ask this one last. He seemed to be in a good mood. And look, I did it as a duty because, quite frankly, I mean, we just can't have Dennis Smith doing everything. We all got to pull our weight around here. And as John F. Kennedy once said, ask not what the Miami Hurricanes can do for you. Ask what you can do for the Miami Hurricanes.
It was amazing, Steve. And listen, it's out there now. So
Yeah.
Dana, listen, I don't want to say we have to hold him accountable to it now, but he said it. So we want to make sure he's a man of his word. I was telling D, and I said it on the show yesterday, I thought it was funny how Mario said right away, "Oh, you're stupid, Steve." And Dana was enthusiastic about the answer, which I thought was cool. So you can tell, man, he's been hanging around some people over there, and he's been liking it. It's one thing to hang around, but to see the product and to want to be a part of it, I think it shows you where we're headed here.
Guys, I would say if this was 2015, he would have given I guess I'll give something. It's a different brand. Right now, Miami is hot. So what do they say when it's hot? You got to strike the iron while it's hot. And it's a better product. There's some energy. There's some real juice. And it's much easier, in my view, to sell something, anything, when it's elite rather than when it's mediocre. And I thought it was interesting. He said that he liked every single New England/Boston team, from the Bruins, Celtics, certainly the Red Sox, but he said he never had a college football team. So obviously Hail Flutie means nothing to him. Daughter goes to the U. You know, now I'm getting hit up if Mario knows Jeff Bezos. I don't think Mario has that number in his phone, but I'll see what I can do. But it's great, though. But there's a real momentum. There's a real positive feeling about the program. And now you have to turn the page. Now we got to win a game tomorrow night.
Yeah, and really win the whole thing as far as the ACC. I mean,
yeah,
championships, I think, you want to win them when you have a great team like this. Obviously, those opportunities don't come around that often, but a lot has to line up, especially with the way the playoff is. But certainly the ACC as a minimum goal. This has to be the year you get over that hump, and then hopefully it's not something you think about every year. It's kind of a given, like it was for FSU for many years, like it was for Clemson for many years. So ACC play, as we get into it, Steve, you who have seen every ACC season Miami's played, as have we, unfortunately, how are you seeing this slate of ACC games? I know FSU was ACC, but that was really bigger than that. That was taken care of. Now as we get into the real ACC schedule, cold November, stuff that Miami struggled with as long as they've been in this conference. Where are you at with ACC play?
Well, I think the messaging is incredibly important, and I love how serious Mario is. Logan Roy, I don't know if you guys watch Succession. Logan Roy would say, Mario Cristobal, you are a serious human being. And I think, when I'm talking about the messaging is this, it's happened the last month or so. These coaches actually openly complain about travel. Like, oh my God, we have to travel more than an hour. And the time zones. And I'm thinking, hey, buddy, you signed up for this. This is the schedule. You cannot control that. And the messaging has to be from this program, guys, you guys get a $90,000 a year tuition for free, and you get to play the great game of college American football, and you get NIL, and we get to play maybe for a national title. We're lucky we don't have a bye. It's all about the messaging. Because when you start saying stuff like, oh, it's going to be tough to travel, and these guys can't sleep on their own, you start to put in doubt and you start to put in the seeds of excuses. Great programs do not do that. And Miami has not been a great program, admittedly. But I like how Mario says, hey, this is the job. This is the endeavor that we are on. This is a 7-game journey that you take 1 week at a time. And I think Mario's messaging throughout the bye week, heading into this week, this Friday, I think it's been excellent.
Yeah, I don't think people realize, Steve, how far, because it's hard to quantify, the culture, the toughness, the locker room stuff, and more so than just the talent. We last week, right? We did a whole segment on how he's flipped the roster. The culture flip, it's easy to talk about it, but it was really bad there at the end of the Manny era, Steve. And there were a lot of good kids in the locker room, and I don't think that it was like, oh, because when people talk about culture, it's not just arrests, suspensions. That's what people think about when they think about culture. But it's more about the stuff you're talking about. Is you face a little bit of adversity, how are you going to withstand that and stay the course? And I think that's another part of this program that Mario has just taken it to a whole different level.
Well, I look back on it. We didn't talk about it last week, but I wanted to bring this up, guys. Do you think when Mario came in December of 2021 and then going into spring practice in 2022, I was actually there that afternoon. I think that was in April of that year. Do you think if he had to do all over again, he would have done what other coaches did and go real heavy portal and just completely flip the roster? Because he kind of went halfway in. I get the sense, this has always been my theory, why he didn't go in the direction of Coach Sanders at Colorado or what Lincoln Riley did at USC, that he's a University of Miami graduate. And he sees these kids that made the commitment to his school, and he thinks, you know what, I'm going to give these kids a shot to work their way into the program and be a part of what we're doing. And I think right after the Middle Tennessee State game, and certainly after the Florida State game, and by the end of that Pitt game, which was one of the most depressing games I've ever seen, I really wonder if Mario looked back in retrospect and said, God, I should have just blown this whole thing up to ground zero.
Yeah, I definitely think he probably thought that. I think there's an element to what you're saying. I think there's also an element of the optics of that year one. But at the end of the day, he still tried to make some moves there. That was Tyreek came in that first year, right?
Yeah.
No, that was
the year before
the Manny.
Manning.
So yeah, no,
Manny's year.
You're right.
We tried to make some moves. I just think the brand is that
They weren't in a position of power.
So here's who's were brought in that first year. So he's brought Daryl Jackson, who we just saw for FSU, Caleb Johnson, linebacker for UCLA, who ended up being okay. I mean, nothing special. Akeem Messidor, still here.
Very good.
Jonathan Dennis, who I heard he's playing pretty well.
Yeah, I saw him as a top 10 rated interior lineman in the country of Louisiana Tech right now. So good for him.
Mitchell Agude, who actually played in the NFL a little bit. Daryl Porter was solid outside corner. Sagapolu, who's now a defensive tackle, I believe, for Washington. Antonio Moultrie, he played, but he was kind of just undersized. Henry Parrish, we know he was a pretty productive back. And then Frank Laston and Jake Lichtenstein didn't make much of an impact here. So they tried. I think part of it was, Mario signed in December, and even though the portal season is still short, like he had time, I guess, to do it. There was just a lot going on, and we weren't. like Mario also signs guys and tells them they're going to start. So we had signed the number 15 class or number 13 class in the country that year. And he was probably thinking like, or actually number 16 class. He's probably thinking like, I got to get Nigel Kelly on the field, Jaleel Skinner, who
Louisville.
We're going to see him tomorrow. Cyrus Moss, guys like that who you Citizen. I mean, when you sign him, you kind of project those guys.
I would also argue the portal was not what it is now with as many as like tampering was going on, but it's way more open now with the collective scene, what it is.
But let's get to these games, Steve. It's always tempting me. When we get you on, I want to go down memory lane to when I was like 6 years old watching Kevin Williams returning punts against Penn State. Let's look forward. And ACC play, Louisville, will start there. You've seen them play. I mean, I think every ACC show that we do from here on out is going to have a very similar football analysis, which is, are their lines really going to be able to deal with what we're doing on both sides of the line? And I think it kind of starts there for me. Where do you see this Louisville game?
You know, when I watched their game against James Madison last month, it was really interesting. Even though they won and Isaac Brown put the game away with a 75-yard home run, I came away thinking, I'm not so sure which team was actually better on this Friday night. I would suggest people watch that game because I kept thinking last year's quarterback, who's now in New Orleans, Tyler Shuck, he had good feet for a big guy. Miller Moss, if we get him behind the chains in 3rd and long, I think we're going to have an opportunity to really hit the quarterback consistently because this guy is not Thomas Castellanos. I think they've been a little bit underwhelming, to be honest. I was hoping they would somehow sneak their way past Virginia. They had a big key turnover at the end. We know what Coach Braun brings to the table. That is a slick, well-coached offensive unit. They find openings. They have certainly a guy on the outside, Chris Bell, that's going to be NFL. Cullen Lacey hit us with a big play last year. Isaac Brown and the rest of that running back room is banged up, though. I'm not so sure any of them are at full speed. Miller Moss is a solid passer, but he's very, very unathletic, and that was one of the issues that Lincoln Riley had with them. My view is Miami has a decided advantage on both sides of the line of scrimmage right up front.
Yeah, I agree with that. By the way, real quick, EJ has said to turn my mic up. If anyone else is having issues hearing me, let me know. Me and D are on the same mic on the same settings, so there's nothing I can do. But if anyone else having trouble hearing me, and then I will try to speak louder. I agree with that, Steve. I said it on the show yesterday. Like, I'm really respect the weapons that they have offensively, and I appreciate Miller Moss for what he is. But I just don't. I see the game plan as we talk about Braum. He's a schemer, but I think that the D line is just going to be able to kind of completely wreck whatever he wants to do. And that's not saying that they can't hit some big plays because they have these guys and Isaac Brown, you can have him trapped and makes a couple guys miss and boom, he's gone. So big plays can still happen here. They'll be able to put some points up, I believe. But
yeah, and I think Duke Watson's banged up. He rolled his ankle against Virginia last week. I watched the first half last night. You know, Isaac Brown is one of those guys. You give him half a step and he's gone. He's out the gate. You know, last year's game was really interesting. We won 52-45, and we literally needed every point, basically, because this is where I knew we were not going to go as far as we thought we could. We were up 52-38 with about 4.5 minutes to go after Damian Martinez ran over like 18 Louisville Cardinals. He just rampaged, and I'm thinking, great. It's 52-38, 4.5 minutes to go. And I said to myself, I was right next to Sean King, the former NFL quarterback at Coach JB's. And I said to him, I go, Sean, let's see if we can actually close this game out defensively and get off the field. It's a 2-touchdown lead. They're going to be in throw game. There's no run game. Let's see if our front four can close it out. Let's see if we can be Mariano Rivera. And it was bing, 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 bing. Onside kick. And I said right there, we're going nowhere. At that point, I said, we're way too flawed because I tried to be as optimistic as possible after the Vautech game. I said, okay, it's one bad game. It's one bad game. Then the Cal miracle. I was at that game, and I said, ooh, we got lucky here. We got to clean this up. After Louisville, I said, it's done. Can't fix it. And Mario Cristobal throughout the offseason during various interviews, I think he told Josh Pate, we lost our way.
Yeah.
And it was at that point I thought, Lance, you are now fighting for your job, whether you know it or not. And quite frankly, he lost it. And it was 52-45. And I said to myself, this team is fun, exciting, but it's irrevocably flawed. This is going to be a test because every year that Miami has played Jeff Brom, I think they've given up well over 35 points each time.
Yeah, I saw someone in the comments mention that Messidors was talking to McLean and Gramlich, and he said that Louisville, which is true, was our last home loss. Right now, I remember that game. Tyler Van Dyke played pretty well, actually. But Guidry's defense, which at that time we still thought was pretty good. Remember that most of the focus that year was on not kneeling against Georgia Tech, Tyler Van Dyke throwing all of his picks. But it was that year he actually played good. Tyler Van Dyke did in that game, threw for a lot of yards, and then we just could not stop the tight end. Braun was carving us up. So something that the team's still thinking about, or at least Messidor's still thinking about. He's probably one of the only guys old enough to remember all this stuff. But you mentioned Tyler Shuck and Miller Moss, and I talked about this on yesterday's show. If anyone has any doubts about the difference between this Louisville team and last year's Louisville team, check out that game, Miami against Louisville, with Tyler Shuck and how many sacks he avoids. He was spinning around. Like, he had one play where Bain got him and he spun around and he flung it to the running back, ended up getting like 6 yards. Like, he made a highlight reel for the New Orleans Saints in that game. 4 touchdowns, no picks. I don't see that kind of performance in the cards for Miller Moss. No. So it's going to have to be something totally different in how they attack Miami. They do have explosive players, 2 kick returns from Lacey. Chris Bell, we've talked about him as being maybe the best draft-eligible receiver in the country, certainly the most physically gifted at 220 can run. It's going to be an interesting game. Their games so far have been up and down, weird games, kind of like our game against them last year.
You know, when you look at last year's game, a couple things stand out. Got to give Mario Cristobal credit because this is something he focuses in on. We dominated the middle 8 last year. We went into halftime with a 7-point lead. We came out of the second half kickoff, drove down the field. We're up by 14. I'm thinking, okay, here we go. Let's come downhill on them. He gave up a touchdown return to Cullen Lacey. And I want to say this before I move further. I've been tough on the special teams unit from last year. I thought they were terrible outside of Borregales and Dylan Price kicking the football. We were bad in basically every other phase of special teams football. This year, the kicking game, the coverage units have actually been very good. I want to give that unit credit on from punt returns to kickoff returns. We've actually been much more sound. There's too many games last year. Miami may have won the offensive battle. They lost the other 2 sides of the football, special teams and defense. But you go back to that game after the Cullen Lacey kickoff return. Now we're up by a touchdown. Then what happens? Mark Fletcher, he doesn't fumble often, but when he does, he makes them count. And then they tied the game about 4 plays later, and then it became a shootout. So this is the reality, though. That was a year where I believe Ruben Bain had come back for that game and was not the same guy. He just was not, okay? Most of that secondary last year, outside of O.J. Frederic, I don't think any of last year's secondary would play on this year's unit. So it is a much improved group across the board. And now, this is the other variable, we're at the Asylum. This is a home game. Should be a Miami advantage.
Steve, now we got almost 800 with us live right now. Why don't we let the people know who this segment is brought to us by?
Absolutely. Great Canes fans out there, the Cruz family. And first of all, I want to say this to Eduardo Cruz Sr. We're rooting for you. We're praying for you. We want you to recover because we might be winning ring number 6. He's the patriarch of the Cruz family and the founder of Jensen's Liquor. And Canes fans, before you head out to Hard Rock Stadium tomorrow night, and make sure you get there early, we have the best tailgate scene in the country by far. Make sure your tailgate is locked, loaded, and ready, fully stocked. Jensen's Sunset Corner has you covered with all the best wine and spirits. Now, if you come in on game days, just on game days, putting on your gear, any company, any brand, any era, you get 10% off any non-sale items on that particular game day. 8701 72nd Street, Miami, Florida, a Miami tradition. Jensen Sunset Corner.
It's professionally done right there.
Thank you.
By the vet, Steve Kim. So, Steve, as you watch, I know you every week on CanesInSight.com, you do a roundup basically of college football. Last week, a week where there was no Canes game, so you're watching a ton. Really, this Saturday will be at Duffy's here at Duffy's Tavern on the edge of Coral Gables, watching all the games. Now accepting credit cards. Watching all those games last week, taking a like really being able to, you're not checking on UM or worrying about UM. What do you see? Where are you at right now with where Miami stacks with some of these teams across the country? Just give me your thoughts on what's happened.
My general thought was overall, there is not a team Miami cannot play with on any given Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, or up until January 19th. I may be biased, I admit it, but like I've always said, I'm a cynical optimist. Ohio State is very good, but offensively, they still have not expanded that offense for Julian Sand. I still feel as though it's going to be interesting to see when they face up with a team that can move the ball and get beyond 20 points, which will be difficult. How much does Ryan Day allow Sand with those two future NFL first-round draft choices outside and Bo Jackson in the backfield to actually stretch the field a little bit? They're good. I liked Oregon. Well, now I like Indiana. Indiana is a well-coached unit. Kurt Cignetti, I don't think there's any need to Google him anymore. We all know what they're about. I thought they did an unbelievable job of controlling the line of scrimmage, and especially after the pick six from Mendoza, the way they scored the last 10 points to end that game, I thought was as impressive as anything I've seen this year from a national perspective. But overall, guys, I'm just telling you, tell me a team that Miami would not be a favorite or anything more than maybe a couple of point underdog, maybe Ohio State on a neutral field. What other team would actually be favored over Miami in 2025 thus far?
I think we were talking about the Ohio State thing on a couple of weeks ago, and yesterday, Canes Cats Heat 305 told me that FanDuel has Miami Ohio State as a 4-point line in Ohio State's favor, if that, as a hypothetical matchup there. So that's interesting. But no, I agree with you. I mean, I think before Oregon lost that game, they probably would have been favored by a couple points against Miami. But I'd say it's Ohio State and Miami right now. If you're matching up like on a neutral site, they'd probably be favored against the rest of the country.
Yeah, and you know what team that I'm just telling you, they're not just scrappy or just this like nice underdog story. Indiana has a lot of talent. Elijah Surratt reminds me a lot of Mike Evans. Omar Cooper is a very effective receiver. We all know we don't have to sing the praises of Fernando Mendoza on this show, okay? But you look at them defensively, from Aiden Fisher to Isaiah Jones to Mikhail Kamara up front, and then D'Angelo Pons, who's probably going to play about, 10 years as a slot corner in the National Football League. That is actually a very talented unit. They don't do it with smoke and mirrors. They actually have some real talent, and Cignetti has guts. He has more guts than I think any coach I've seen recently, and I hope he stays at Indiana. But you look at the national landscape, what I want to see from Miami the next 7 weeks, we got to have a sledgehammer to a fly mindset. I'm just looking at this, and I'm going to be hypocritical, but again, Danny, as you like to say, we're not the players or coaches. We are just fans and guys who will do a podcast, right? We got to start putting up 50 spots. We got to start putting up some Curtis Jacksons. Against this schedule, we have got to expand and evolve this offense to be a little bit more explosive. And with this defensive line, you always want to play from ahead. You do. You want Ruben Bain to win the Heisman? Let him play with the lead in the fourth quarter of 3 possessions. That's how defensive linemen thrive, is from playing from ahead. Bill Walsh always said one thing, and I was talking to someone last night that we both know. Bill Walsh never actually said, I established the run. He thought it was the dumbest thing he ever heard. He said, no. Because I establish points. He goes, I don't care how I do it, but if I have to throw 40 times to begin the game and I get up 31-0 by the third quarter, that's what I'm going to do, because my general philosophy is this. He said, I don't establish the run early. No. I run the ball late as I have a big lead, and I let Charles Haley and Fred Dean rush the passer without ever having to worry about the throw game. That was his general game plan. I've read books on this. I've watched a lot of games where he beat my Rams for about 10 years. I think that establishing the run is good when you can actually establish the run. But just to run the ball, to say, because that's our identity, I've never agreed with that philosophy.
Yeah, I would. So I would push back a little just because, Bill Walsh coached professional football, right? So in professional football, the Eagles last year being an exception, and even then they won the championship, there's really not that much difference between the physical prowess of the offensive lines and defensive lines in the NFL. They're all first round laden, they're all professional players. Some are better than others, but it's not like they're different species. In college, there can be a profound difference between the power running game of one team and the defensive line of the other team and vice versa. I think this is what you saw with Alabama and Georgia for many years, where they always had that physical advantage. So, I would push back for us because I do think we need to establish the run just enough that they really have to commit resources to stopping the run. I think ACC-wise, because these teams are so weak up front, pretty much everybody has to do what FSU did and sell out against the run, because we are too dominant running the ball, and it's a lot easier to just hand the ball to Mark Fletcher than to throw it. Even if a good quarterback, good passing game, like, the snap could be bad, the ball could get tipped, it could rain. Like there's more things that can go wrong on a pass than a run. So when you have a dominant running game, that's the first priority, is to stop that for a defensive coordinator. So, I would push back and say, I think we do need to establish the run enough to get the safeties down. But as I say that, they might have that anyways, just based on film. And we don't have to show anything because they know what we can do running the ball.
Danny, I don't disagree with any of that, but I'll make this point. I think we've already faced the two best secondaries for 2025. I thought Florida played very well on the back end against, and certainly Notre Dame in the secondary is going to have guys that play at the next level. But it is a cat and mouse game. You're right. Basically, how you align your safeties tells you a lot about your defense. But when you look at this Miami team, I don't know an ACC secondary that's going to be able to run with Miami. Now, here's one thing I do want to watch. I can't believe I'm getting sucked into this. Are we now on a weekly JoJo Trader watch? I think it's amazing that a guy I think he has all of 6 career catches, and every week he's like a focus.
Thank you for bringing him up. This will be a great segment for the YouTube channel today. I do think there was a bit of a different tone from Shannon Dawson this week when it came to him. He talked about how he, has sat down with him and they've had some, great conversations, and he's worked his way back in the mix here, which I think, for being honest, he was able to allude to more of the situation than, hey, it's a health thing. Because if you're talking about that sort of stuff, I think you're kind of getting to the bottom of it if the coach is coming out there and saying that. And we talked about it with Amon earlier this week as well. Amon thought the tone was different with how they were talking about him. So with all of that being said, do you scheme him up a couple plays here when you're up a couple touchdowns and try to get him some confidence? It seems like he's earned some confidence and trust back.
Yeah, I mean, one thing Mario Cristobal said, I forgot when, but he actually said, before we offer a player and say, hey, do you want to be a part of this program? He actually wants these kids and their parents to come to a practice, because he actually wants to have some evidence that, hey, you know what we do here. This is not easy. This ain't Camp Good Times. You want a soft, easy, fun practice? We don't do that anymore. He actually wants you to know what you're getting into. And I love the fact, and again, just about being a serious human being, practice matters. Ask DJ Lagway if he wanted to practice the whole year and if it's impacted his game, his inability to actually go out there and work in the off season. Yeah, are there some guys that are Roy Hobbs that are naturals that could step on the field, have bad practices, or just sit out and be great? Yeah. Those guys are once in a lifetime. Everyone else has to kind of work at that craft on a daily basis. And I did think Shannon Dawson's comments were really interesting. Look, you have to understand now, this whole business of college football is now more of a business than ever. Me and Coach JB talk about it all the time. It is so transactional, because now when you are getting money through the NIL and the collective and all that other stuff, you know what comes with that? Obligation and expectations. And when you're talking about money, there's also a budget. Nothing is unlimited. And if you get passed up or you do not fulfill your side of the bargain, there are ramifications, unfortunately. And here's the other harsh reality that I love for this program. The days of guys like Jeff Thomas being able to do what they do and actually kind of survive their way through for 3 years, it's over. There's actually standards now at this program.
Talk about the culture.
And that goes right back to the cultural thing. I want this to happen for JoJo Trader because I don't think these kids realize that it's no longer just a scholarship, room and board, and an opportunity to get your education and play football. Once you start getting money for this, we have to lift the veil and not be hypocritical. This is now professional football. And kids ought to look up that word professional because that means there's an obligation and responsibility. So this thing is so cutthroat. And unfortunately, the days of the program guy that we like, but he's just going to be a scout team player for 5 years and work. I don't know if that exists anymore. And that's the other side of how harsh this business has become.
Steve, so by the way, we got some super chats. Lord Baconton, Peony Boys, we'll get to those here in a minute. But with JoJo Trader, I don't know if they make the new Top Gun movie, if they should have him starring in that movie next to our boy Danny Ramirez and Tom Cruise, because I've never seen someone do box office like JoJo Trader. Every video we do on him gets the most views of any video we do, no matter what. And this is since his last actual snap. Can you remember, this is not a rhetorical question. If anyone's going to know you're the person, can you remember somebody that was like this, that you just kind of talked about him before they played for a long time and there were stops and starts and you didn't get him on the field? And then finally it went one way or the other. Like, is there a parallel that comes to your mind?
Kind of, sort of. Jamie German. Jamie German was the 1993 #1 player of the year. People at Fort Myers, and I remember people were literally comparing him to Deion Sanders. There was actually a debate whether he'd be a #1 wide receiver or a shutdown corner. And he actually played a little bit in 93, 94, made a bit of a splash. But every year there was this expectation that he was going to be just a superstar. And I was at this game in 1994. We played Arizona State. They had Jake Plummer. We brutalized them. And he had 2 touchdowns on the shuttle screen. And I happened to actually have really good seats. Guys, I have never seen acceleration like Jamie German on one of those tunnel screens. And there he comes. He's arrived. He's arrived. This is the coming out party. Never really happened. And then in 95, he had a decent year with Ryan Clement in Butch Davis's first season as our coach. And then Limogate happened. And basically we never got to see him again. And it was just like, it was a complete disappointment. But every single year you thought Jamie German is going to be that guy. And to go even further, a player that everyone would talk about every offseason, and Danny, I think you had to be just on the boards. This was during Grassy. We had this recruit in the late 90s out of Texas. His name was Torrey Mitchell.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a high school phenom that
the
Butch
late
Davis.
Torrey Mitchell, I think. I hope
right.
Not, but I think, yeah.
And he ran like a 4.1 or a 4.2 as like an 11th or 12th grader. And we thought, oh, this is going to be unbelievable. And then every time he got to Miami, he got homesick and he'd go back home to Texas. So the joke was on Grassy's board. He runs a 4.3 on the field and a 4.1 back to Texas.
I got two. Latuan Anderson.
Yeah,
that was a good one because he was on track scholarship and Randy would not comment on him. And then the other one was Derek Griffin, who
never made it in.
Well, we don't know. There's some talk, Steve, he could enroll in January. So
I was hoping for a happy ending on one of these. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I was trying to let you.
I thought your question, D, was like, have we seen someone who's gone through this stuff and then ended up being like a real big time player? I would argue also that we are in a different era where, if in the early 2000s, we had these podcasts and social media, there would probably be a lot of speculation about certain players that didn't end up making it or ended up breaking through. We overanalyze a lot of stuff, obviously. But
here's another name.
Go ahead.
Alfred Shipman. Froggy, one of the 5 fastest players in program history. He wore number 32. And the one year he got the ball a little bit, I think he averaged 10 yards a carry. And he could have been a slot receiver or he could have been the I-back with Erickson. And there's legendary stories about him. So during his short spell at Miami, because I think he was there for 3 years, you kept thinking, oh, this guy's going to be unbelievable. And then something happened that when Butch Davis come over, he just didn't fit in. And I think he had a short career in the Canadian Football League. So that's another Green Tree legend right there. Alfred Froggy Shipman.
Now, I will play devil's advocate, totally different situation, totally different player. So it's not the same situation, but a similar timeline, I guess, which is, Andre Johnson, again, totally different person, totally different type of player, but he took a while to develop, even though he was a 5-star coming in. Yeah. He played behind Santana Moss, Reggie Wayne, Andre King, dropped a lot of balls in practice. And then really it was not until his third year, his redshirt sophomore year, that you really saw what he could do. So different. I'm not comparing him to JoJo because they're very different, but just that he was a highly touted guy coming in, and it took him a couple years to show what he could do. And then once he was ready, it was on, and he was a star. So
Danny, I've mentioned this. Coming into 2001, Andre Johnson's third year in the program, he redshirted in 99, played sparingly in 2000. He had all the 5 career catches. You can look it up. But here's the difference, though. You never heard anything about Andre Johnson except this guy was an absolute grinder. And you want to talk about being a consummate football player. He actually not only returned kickoffs early on, he was actually a gunner on special teams. That's what type of guy he was. So you kind of knew, like, he's just got to wait his time. I remember the first time I saw him, it was at the 99 Kickoff Classic in New Jersey. He played Ohio State. And all of the red shirts were allowed to come to the game. They wear their jerseys with the green Nike sweatpants, and they're all sitting on top of the bench standing. Guys, if you did not know that Andre Johnson was actually a wide receiver, you would have thought that's a young defensive end that just needed a little bit more weight. That's what type of physical specimen he was. But when Andre Johnson was not catching footballs, which he did very well eventually, he was still making a contribution. You always felt his arc was trending upward the whole time.
Braxton was a good one. Braxton Barrows, I see in the comments here, because he was talked about a lot. I talked about him on Green Tree because I thought, he looked like he did later on early. Then he got hurt. He got a little heavy. Not because he was bad work ethic. I think he just bulked up too much. So that was a little bit of a process there with Braxton. We all remember fondly because how the last year went, but it wasn't that way the whole way through. Before we switch this topic, which again, thank you for bringing it up because it is instant box office when a national sports reporter talks JoJo Trader. Pizza ready.
We're already over 1,000. We were at 800 live, and now we're at over 1,000 just talking JoJo.
If JoJo Trader ever goes for 8 catches, 175, we may have to just do an emergency podcast. I mean, seriously.
I'll be moving to Naples, man. I'll be in Jupiter or something. I'll be in one of those golf courses if JoJo Trader has any production. But as we get through the rest of the year, and this has been a topic we talked about. Everybody talked about Amon Richards a lot, and I want to talk about it with you. Wide receiver, let's say wide receiver 3 or third option 3, included tight ends as well. I think we all agree we need someone else to help Malachi, CJ Daniels. It's great to have 2 studs, but most teams have 2 guys right there at the top. They don't have a fleet. They have true go-to guys, but we still need more. And as we get to the ACC slate, you mentioned the secondaries are going to be subpar. I think Carson Beck's going to have a lot of time. I think teams are going to stop our running game. All things that fit in with an explosive passing game. Who are you watching to be that third option going forward the rest of the year? It might be different people every day, but when we look back on this season, who's going to be the guy that is that third guy for you?
Well, I think Keelan Marion's made a really good contribution, but I think it's clear he's not what you'd call the most natural, pure receiver, right? Tony Johnson's a solid workman, good blue-collar guy that every room should have because he raises that floor with his work ethic, and he seems like a really good team guy. But again, this is where JoJo can come in here. Look, we are only a third of the way in, guys. Back in the olden days, we'd be halfway through the season. If you want to play deep playoff football and play in January, you're going to play 15-plus games. There is still a lot of time for young Trader to make his mark on the program and plant the flag and say, hey, guys, I'm here. But it's got to start now because this train moves with or without you. That's just the way it goes in this business now, right? So this is going to be interesting. And I'm still looking for that breakout game. I know me and you are driving the bandwagon here, Elijah Lofton. I think Lofton's been effective. I think I'm hoping, this is wishful thinking, that the bye week is going to get Elijah Lofton to a point physically and athletically to the guy that you saw back in the spring and early fall camp, Danny.
And not just me, right? You heard it from others. I know you talked to a lot of people. It's not like this was just a one-man hype train. Everybody that was at practice was saying the same thing. So Pete, with all that material now, I know your creative clickbait juices are flowing like Pablo Picasso on some titles for that segment. But I want to get some super chat, Steve, because a lot of people want to talk to you before we get you out of here. Our guy Lord Baconton says, "Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye." The noble Lord Baconton is this Chris Bell kid as good as the wide receiver from ASU, Jordan Tyson? You know, I brought it up. I thought he was the best NFL prospect of the draft eligible guys. I know some of them are in your neck of the woods. Makai Lemon from USC, Tyson from Arizona State, Cornell Tate in Ohio State. But I don't know, Bell, with his size and speed, Pete, I'll let you chime in too, because I know you have thoughts on this. How do you see him stacking up with some of these receivers?
Oh, well, Chris Bell's a big body guy and he's physical. And I think that some of those other guys are really going to be more slot receivers at the next level. Chris Bell, I believe, is going to be a little bit more of an outside guy. But, you know, I get to see a lot of Makai Lemon, and there are now comparisons with him and Puka Nacua. And that's a high ceiling, but he's a tough guy, and he makes a lot of tough body catches. Chris Bell does much of the same thing. He's not a guy that gets great separation. He's a little bit like Elijah Surratt in the sense that he's got very strong hands. I wouldn't say he's a guy that every play you think he's going to take the top off the defense, but Chris Bell is their clear number one guy. And I'm kind of looking at the schedule. I'm not really sure we're going to play a more productive receiver the rest of the season. Because does Stanford have a guy like that? Does Vatek have a guy like this? Does Pitt have a guy like that? You know, they have their version of Johnny Football now. So as I look at the rest of the Miami schedule, Chris Bell is probably, off the top of my head, I know SMU has a wide open system. I don't think they have a Chris Bell.
Romello Brinson, their top receiver.
Yeah.
He's actually having a good year.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bell. I think the big body stuff is tough to defend, and I think gives you a different look from what they've had to face. Right, NFL wise, the separation that's another debate for another day. But once he gets going, he can separate, and when he's got the ball in his hands, I mean he can take it to the house every time he touches it. Really.
Peony Boy saying, "Steve, you need to bring Dana White to a CanesInSight podcast. We're doing baby steps. Baby steps. First, we'll get in the Canes connection." But Steve, talking to Dana, just in general, what feel that you get for what he's doing with boxing? We know he's doing with UFC and everything else, and Canes connection, hopefully. But on the boxing side, what sense did you get from him?
Well, I think he wants to revamp the whole thing. I mean, he said for years, boxing does not play to the masses. The one thing about the UFC, they try to make as many matches. They try to be more fan-centric than fighter-centric in a sense that if you look at boxing, they always try to brand their fights, the Thrill in Manila, the Rumble in the Jungle. And it's really about the stars. If you look at his organization, it's just UFC 1, 2, 3, and now above 300. In other words, our logo and our brand and our shield is bigger than any one fighter. In boxing, if the main event fighter, either one of them drops out, the whole card is generally scrapped. Yeah. The UFC, whoever drops out, the show must go on. The train keeps moving for the most part. He wants to consolidate it. I don't know if he's going to bring more division, because if he says, I'm not going to work with other promoters, I'm not going to recognize any of the other championship belts outside the ring belt, I think that could certainly be an issue. Look, Dana is a polarizing figure. He's like Sinatra. He does it his way. Now, some people may disagree with that, but I also say in defense of him, the way boxing's been doing it for 30 years has made this sport less relevant than it's ever been in the United States of America. That's a fact. So I'm willing to give it a shot, and I just hope that when the time comes where he has to reach across the island to make fights, that he actually does it.
Yeah, I think just, someone's more of a casual boxing fan, but does, watch boxing, that it's hard to keep up with all the titles. And it's hard to, you have to really, I really have to go read your stuff to know kind of who's kind of the paper champion and who is the actual champion. And sometimes, the lineal champion, all that, it just gets confusing. So streamlining it, it's kind of like the NBA. Go ahead.
Dan, here's another thing. The modern day boxer, and I've written a lot of articles about this, and I've coined a term that everyone uses now, activity matters. Most of our big name marquee fighters in boxing only fight once or twice a year. How are you going to market that in what is already becoming a niche sport? Say what you want about our beloved Miami Hurricanes, no matter how mediocre, bad, or good they are. I'm guaranteed 12 games a year. I don't miss a single one. Hopefully this year we get 16 or 17. But in college football, you get games. Major League Baseball, you get to see the Dodgers 162 times, Lakers 82, Hockey, I believe, is 82. I don't know if they shortened the season or not. But every other sport has activity where you get to see your stars and your attractions on a much more consistent basis. And I'm not saying that boxing has to go back to the times when guys fought once a month. That's not going to happen. But is it too much to ask that they actually fight 3 times a year? And unfortunately, the feedback that I get is that it is. And that's a scary proposition for the long-term health of boxing.
The one thing I'll say, just from my understanding of it, Steve, is that where I do think that Dana has a chance to do something here is that, people get on him for paying the fighters a certain way, the cut of the, that the UFC takes, all that. But from my understanding, the lower level UFC fighters, it's like, at least when I was around, it was 10-10 was like their base deal. Yeah. That's still going to be a lot more than what a lot of these regional boxers would,
That's the truth.
And I think that's where he has a chance to build a little farm system there, because yes, they may not end up being the top of the line guys yet, but I think he wants to try to build these guys. Whether or not he can do it, I don't know. But those lower leveled, lower tier guys who are going to be at the bottom of a card are going to make way more money with the Zuffa stuff.
Peter, here is the reality. I think about 95% of the money in boxing is made by 5% of the fighters. And I've heard that often, that the UFC, they at least have a functioning middle class of participants that can make a living. They may not be making 7 or 8 figures, but they are making more than the preliminary boxers at the 4, 6, and 8 round level.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of the NBA a little bit in terms of, I think and I've always been an NBA fan, and you want the players to have rights where they're not exploited. But when the stars run the whole league, the stars are going to do what's best for them and not what's best for the fans, or as long as they can still make the same amount of money. So it's like, they don't care. They shouldn't care. They're individuals. They're not, their job's not to look out for the fans, but when you give them all the power, they're going to look out for themselves like anyone else. So if you end up having an NBA, people missing for injuries and everything else, the product's gone complete downhill. In NFL, it doesn't matter if it's Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, whatever star it is, the train just keeps on running.
Athlete empowerment, there's an uncomfortable reality to it. It hurts the fans. It does. Load management has got me completely off the NBA. It has. I just don't want to do it. If you don't care about the games, fine. I won't either. And there has to be this issue where at what point is the general paying public important? It's amazing to me, all what I call fanavists. They act like activists, and I'm like, hey, I just want to be a fan. I just want to watch some ball games and people compete. You can care about their rights later. I don't get a piece of the cut here. I see this a lot in boxing. Yeah, people trying to live vicariously through certain fighters, and I'm like, what are you, their financial advisor? My God. So I look at this as a situation where Dana is a disruptor in an industry that, quite frankly, probably needs a little bit of disruption.
I love it. So here we go. Some more questions here. Plank Time wants to know, appreciate your support as everybody with the super chats as we catch up here. He wants to know how you became friends with Coach JB Brown.
Well, he came on let's see. He did a video about 3-4 years ago ripping Kyler Murray for missing a hot read on a blitz. He actually did this video, and it was as profane as you'd think. And it was really funny. It went viral. So I sent that over to Jason Whitlock, who years ago actually had him on the Speak for Yourself show when he was on Fox. So Jason, I said, oh, this is a good video. I actually know this guy. Let's get him on Fearless. So I kind of made that happen, whether everyone knows it or not. And then he made a couple of more appearances with Whitlock, and then I just DM'd him saying, hey, I'm blah, blah. I introduced myself, and we got along. And then one day, I think it was during the 2022 season, he goes, hey, if you want to watch some ball games, come over to my place if you want to come. So I came from NFL Sunday, and we just hit it off. And then it was really the 2023 season where we created Football Palooza. And so what I'll do, guys, I wake up early in the morning, and I get to his house by about 8:40 a.m. Pacific time, watch the end of game day. We get all his TV set up. I'm like young Norm Chow. I coordinate the TVs. I have a schedule. I'm like, this game here, 4 box here. Let's go here. So we have a big thing going on. He's barbecuing the whole day. And literally from about 9 a.m. till about 9:30, 10 p.m., it's all ball all the time.
Norm Chow, man. I don't know. Are you young Norm Chow still? I mean, Norm Chow in his prime, I think, was about our age, man.
Yeah. We age different now. We age different.
So, Rock and Rant saying Mario mentioned Brahm in his play calling his press conference. I think that's a sign he's sick of hearing about it and wants to make a statement. Great stuff. Appreciate the support, Rock and Rant. Yeah, do you sense that, Steve? I know you're someone. Yeah. You probably remember when the Brahm brothers were playing. I know I do. Brian Brahm, the brother, killed us
on
in 2000.
Thursday night, right?
Yeah, killed us a couple times, really. But I remember one of them was like when we were still rolling high with Kyle Wright. We thought we were good, and he just lit us up in Louisville. But that idea that Mario's been hearing, kind of like Golesh, by the way, hearing about the other side and what they're doing, how smart they are, and kind of wants to put an end to that. You think that's a real thing? You think Mario's the kind of guy?
Look, the first year I think they scored 38 on us, right? Last year they scored 45. You know what wrecks any great offensive game plan? Dominant D-line play. I was taught that long ago. You could have the fanciest, well-schemed plays, but if you dominate the trenches and you push people back and you hit the quarterback consistently, all of that can go out the window. And speaking of Louisville game, you're thinking of 2006, which really marked the end of Coker. It was final proof, like, okay, we're out. That's when we stomped on midfield, and then Louisville stomped on us for 4 quarters. The game that was really exciting, though, was the game 2 years earlier, 2004. Yeah, that was the prime time Devin Hester game. We scored on the opening drive, 7-0 at the Orange Bowl, and we're thinking, okay, we're good. And then it was Bobby Petrino, old Olive Garden. Anyone remembers Olive Garden, that moniker? You are a real one.
The franchise.
Oh, yeah, the Olive Garden. He says, that's a fake Italian, Olive Garden. That still makes me laugh. Then it became Olive. Like, they just sorted it. They scored the next 24 points in the first half. They absolutely riddled our defense. Opening kickoff of the second half, Hester takes it back, but there's a penalty, but we end up scoring. And I think we won a thrilling game. Devin Hester had this great punt return to put us ahead. Then they went ahead, and then we went ahead. But Louisville's been a thorn in our side for a long time, fellas.
And that was the Brandon Merriweather hit game as well. He had that devastating hit across the middle. I think it was on a tight end.
Yeah, it was a short cross.
Yeah.
All right, so listen, we got Lance Roffers in the bullpen here. Steve, I know we only have you for like a few more minutes, but can we bring in the 4 horsemen here?
Please do. I love Lance.
And then you call yourself out when you got to go drop all your plugs. There we go. Lance, how you doing?
Morning. Hey, what's up, fellas?
Morning, Lance. How you doing?
Hey, Pete. Pete's got to keep it all together with these guys on the screen, right?
What a den! You got the smoking ibis here, the Dennis Smith bat signal. You got just like a number one dad thing right here. What's in the far back? I'm seeing like an army of some sort. Is that a team? I'm seeing the massive people back there.
Yeah, so that's the Canes walking through the smoke, right? I think that was like a Sun Sentinel picture from several years back, and I told my wife I thought it was cool, and she made it happen for me. So she's a real one, as they like to say. So
shout out to Mrs. Vision. Yeah, man, I thought it was like a Civil War kind of deal, man. It shows you how long it's been since we've been rolling like we're rolling right now. But Lance, man, we're talking about Louisville game, talking with Steve. This is really kind of new season for us here in the ACC. We had the rival state championship season. Hopefully we have the championship season there at the end with the playoff. Now ACC championship season. As we get into ACC play, and forget about FSU, it's a rivalry game. Talking about, the bread and butter ACC games that we always lose. What are you seeing with this team as we head for this gauntlet here?
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend of mine earlier, right? It's like I have kind of gotten over my PTSD just a little bit, right? Last year, rather kind of returned the hope. There for many years, it was almost like, how are we going to like finish 8-4 this year? And last year, you get out to the great start, and you still have a little bit of dread. This year, I really am starting to have confidence in this team, and that traditionally has kind of been where maybe we've had a little bit of a hiccup. But I'll tell you, I think this is a different kind of challenge than what Miami's faced thus far, right? With Notre Dame, you really kind of had to match the physicality, kind of had a redshirt freshman quarterback, but still, one of his first starts, if not his first start of his career. So they kind of were a little conservative there. I think it was like a boxing match. Steve will kind of tell you, both teams kind of felt each other out for a while before they really settled into that game. And you saw, quite a bit more scoring in the second half of that game. Then you kind of get into, Florida and there's just like a lot of hate there, right? And that's just kind of, they grew up together and you've got all that goes with that. You really don't have to motivate players for that kind of game. You get to Florida State and I think they're more of they beat you with actual scheme, right? Where just the way that they use the eye candy and different things, they set their players up to be able to kind of beat you that way, more so than they just have dominant talent, right? And I think Brian Brom presents and Jeff Brom and those individuals down there at Louisville, I think they present a different challenge in the fact that they beat you through play calling, right? They're more of they just have kind of an innate feel to set plays up. They present the same types of looks and then run variations of that play off that same look, right? And that's not something that Miami has really seen this year thus far, in my opinion, is that type of play caller. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Miami defense prepared for them with some time off. And then the Louisville defense, like the Miami defense, is very different than what we've typically seen the past several years. They're actually good this year, or at least statistically they're good this year and have done some really good things, especially in the red zone. So I think they present a new challenge. The last time I was on, I think you asked me what I felt like was the biggest remaining challenge for this team as far as going undefeated goes. They're all, unpredictable, and each week anything can happen. But I picked this game because I think Jeff Brom and his play calling ability is so great that, he can really just kind of get you into one of those shootout games and anything can happen in those. And I do also believe that Miller Moss has some talent if you let him have some time.
Lance, going back to their game against JMU on a Friday night, and I understand that every team's different every week. If you watched that game, were you underwhelmed by their offensive line in general?
I haven't watched every snap of every game. I won't say that I have, but I've been underwhelmed with their offensive line when I've watched it in every game. Quite honestly, okay. I think out of every group that I watched in Louisville, I felt like their offensive line was probably their weakest point overall. Yeah. I think they have actual talent at every spot and level other than offensive line. And so that, with Miami, that presents an opportunity, I think. What about you? What did you see?
Yeah, I look, if you go back to that JMU game, I didn't understand them switching out quarterbacks with Sluka and I think Alonzo Barrett is his name. They missed opportunities early. They had a gadget play dialed up that they overthrew. I came away thinking, and I wanted Louisville to win because I always want teams to have a better record against Miami coming in than a bad one. And look, sure. I'm a bit of an ACC guy now, and I remember thinking for 3.5 quarters, I thought JMU was a better team than Louisville, to be frank. But again, a team in week 1 or week 2 is going to be much different than week 6. I understand things can change. But as we're talking about earlier, Lance, the group of skill positions and speed that Louisville has combined with Brom's acumen for offensive play calling, I do think this is the most dangerous game remaining on the schedule. I'm with you on that.
Yeah,
to be fair, Steve.
Go ahead, Pete.
Go ahead, Lance. No, I was just going to say James Madison might hold up pretty well in the ACC themselves.
They're solid. It's a good program.
Indiana's basically James Madison plus Mendoza right now. And that's their team. They're one of the best in the Big Ten.
Pitt made a quarterback change. I was actually impressed with him, the little that I've seen. Now, granted, it's two games with them, but I think Pitt's probably the other one that you could kind of point to as one that could be a trap just because Narduzzi uses that pattern matching. And that's something that has befuddled Beck at times in games, in the SEC where teams have used that pattern matching to get maybe some turnovers from him. Haven't seen it as much this year, but that's definitely something that I could see. I have seen SMU live. They actually came to Missouri State and played at Missouri State. I was at that game, and I'll tell you, I wasn't overly impressed with them. I think we should be able to handle them, and so really the only thing that I would kind of point to is this Louisville game, and then at Pitt are the two that give you the most pause from an undefeated regular season. Obviously, we're talking about going undefeated as this fan base. We know anything can happen, but that's kind of where I'm at. And you brought up some good points there, Steve, on what Louisville really likes to do and how they like set up and dial those deep shots or those explosive plays. That's not their game. They really are not predicated on the explosives, but what they do is set them up very well. And this year they've missed them more than they have in past years. But that doesn't mean that they're going to miss them in this game, right? So that's just something that Miami needs to be leery about. And I've got kind of some notes from what I've seen on film that I'll probably talk through here in a little bit. But that's definitely the way that Louisville has changed from that JMU game to now is they've really evolved and used their tight ends quite a bit more. They have 2 pretty good ones right now. And each week you are seeing more and more of a focus on using the tight ends within their split zone. And that split zone action that they are really incorporating more and more as the season has gone along has an EPA per play off the charts. They've really hit seam shots with it. They've hit tight end leak. They've used them as both a lead block and a wham, and that has unlocked a little bit of their run game. You've got Skinner, who left Miami and transferred there. He's not really their starter. He's probably more of a 1B than he is a 1A for them. But that's something that Louisville has really moved more towards and seen a lot of success from that JMU game to now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I watch in Louisville. If we lose this game, to me, this is the worst loss since the Fiesta Bowl. I mean, these guys are – as Chris Bell's great, this is the worst offensive line I've seen maybe in – shoot. If you don't include Bethune, what was the last offensive line we played that was this bad? I was shocked at how bad they are against the run and pass.
The way you talked about Florida's, I would have thought that Florida's would have been worse.
Well, they were the lowest rated in history according to PFF when they played us, but I think that had a lot to do with us versus them as opposed to them.
Danny, let's go back to something we talked about a couple of weeks ago. I like the way, look, we didn't like the 2 bye weeks so close together, but look, we came off an exhausting game at the end where we played Bain and Messidor a lot, right? They each played over 75 snaps. We're coming off a long week and we're playing at home. And our next game is Stanford. So there's no look ahead here. It's Louisville. You're right. Based on some of those factors, this is a must-win game. Miami is trying to aim for big heights. We're trying to climb Mount Everest. We can't get tripped up here. Like, say what you want about the Virginia-Florida State game. That was a short week going on the road looking ahead to Miami. This situation, this dynamic is completely opposite what they went through. There is no excuse. Miami should win. I don't care about the point spread. But this is a game that if you're a serious national championship contender, you win. That is the mark of a good program, is to win every game you are supposed to. And something that Cristobal has done very well recently, you protect your house. Bottom line.
I'm with you, man. Jake Campbell says, I'm refusing to respect opponents yet again. Well, I'm not playing, first of all, so that's the good news. The other good news is, I mean, I've been picking, waiting for exactly. I've been waiting for that close game because I know college football, these things happen. But then when I break down the game, I'm like, these teams aren't close. But then I end up picking close because I'm betting on college football magic. I'm done with that. We should kill these guys. I mean, that offensive line can't. I mean, Lance, would you agree that this is one of the worst offensive lines in the country, run blocking and pass blocking both? Is that a fair statement to say?
I don't watch every team, but the ones I do watch, this is the worst one I've seen.
And Lance, playing from ahead is a lot easier way to play defense, is it not?
Yeah, that's what Louisville wants to do. Obviously, they want to get ahead to where they force Miami to, kind of play catch up with them and change the way that Miami plays their pressure packages. Because if Louisville falls behind with Messidor and Bain and what they've shown and the ability to pressure from the inside with those creepers, this game could get ugly.
Yeah, Miller Moss, as you mentioned, Pete, he's a solid guy that can make throws. But if you watch the USC offense, the athleticism and the ability to extend plays from Jaden Maeva has completely – it's looked like a Lincoln Riley offense again. That's the one thing about Miller Moss. If you get him in the 3rd and long, he's not going to escape from pressure the way Tyler Shuck can. And I'm just telling the USC fans, they like Miller Moss. They love Jaden Maeva for a reason. Guys, I got to get out of here, but I just want one last thing here. Again, before you head to Hard Rock Stadium, guys, make sure you go to Jensen Sunset Corner. On game days, which it'll be tomorrow night before you head up to Hard Rock, load up your tailgate. If you wear your gear on game days, all non-sale items will be 10% off. 8701 72nd Street, Miami, Florida. And again, best wishes to Eduardo Cruz Sr. going through some things. We look forward to seeing you and healthy returns to you, sir.
Great job as always. By the way, where can they find you? If they want to see,
well, I'm on Twitter.
Discussion.
Well, I tweet a lot at Steve Kim 323. Instagram with my East LA roots, Steve Orale Kim, and I do the 3 knockdown rule with Mario Lopez. You can see our clip with Dana White on this week's particular program. I'll be on with Coach JB in a few minutes here, but stick around here. You can watch JB later. Stick around. Don't miss Lance. And then I'm also on with Fearless on Jason Whitlock show.
Steve, we got to do a boxing show next week with our girl Lisa Snow in the comments. She's out here breaking down the Haney Norman fight blow for blow. So we got a lot of hardcore boxing fans. So everybody, boxing fan, check out Steve Kim on all his platforms. You're the best. Appreciate you.
I'll see you this weekend, fellas. And Lance, good seeing you again.
You as well.
All right, Lance, let's dive in even deeper here. Beyond just me kind of doing the pep rally. You've seen this team now for a good sample size, given the opponents and the different styles that they've had to play against. With the way this team is built now, we know in long season injuries change the dynamic, but just the players that you've seen, the way we've played to this point. For those who don't know, Hurricane Vision on Twitter, Lance Roffers, you do the upon further review articles pretty much after every single game. I think you've done every single game this season, even did the BUZZN slog, if I recall, up there on CanesInSight. There you go. Detailed breakdowns, play for play, all the little details. I mean, shoulder placement, everything you could possibly think of, eyes. It's being broken down here. So you've looked at this team deeply many times. You've probably seen each game a few times, just rewinding plays. What is this team as we sit here headed into the hard ACC play?
Yeah, I've mentioned it a few times that this is the best team that we've had since at least 2023 or 2003, depending on how you felt about that team. Obviously, 2002 lost on a controversial call in the national championship game. That team was pretty good. And so I'd say this is probably the best team since then from a talent standpoint, from an overall coaching standpoint. I believe the coaches have done a good job this year. They've really gotten them up. They've been resilient. They've not blinked whenever an opponent has put any kind of comeback on them. This team, to me, is also built different just because of the fact that they can win in so many different ways now. Whereas last year, we really relied on Cam Ward a lot to just do something special to really win a lot of games. I think the defensive changes that we've seen this year with a healthy Ruben Bain, Mesidor, I call it what you will. I don't know if it was getting into shape or just putting him in a place to succeed. Both of those players look like All-American players, whereas last year they looked like solid ACC guys, right? And that jump has been just massive. I think the scheme, just the ability to really be able to understand what the offense is trying to do and take away kind of maybe the best option that they have has really changed the way that the defense has been able to you can win a game with the defense now, right? You can win a game where maybe the weather's off, Beck's off, maybe you have an injury, something like that. You can still win a game with this team. And I got to tell you, they will be favored in every game. They should win every game the rest of the year. I look at the teams that they're playing, and for the most part, I don't think they have the ability to exploit things that Miami would be like a weakness for them, just because of the fact that they have the physicality that they do this year that maybe they haven't had at any point, right? I've long believed that what separates the SEC from all the other conferences and teams that you see throughout is their defensive line and just the ability to have depth on the defensive line and the physicality that they have there, because that just sets such a floor for a team, right? If you can't block the opponent, you automatically have to alter everything that you're doing from a schematic standpoint to account for that. And if you can block the other team, they automatically have to, adjust schematically to what you do just to be able to account for that. And Miami has that advantage with every team that they play. And I also believe that they've added analysts. They've taken steps to raise the infrastructure of the program to where they operate now, like what you would think of as like a big time college program, what the SECs of the world do. And what that aids is really that game planning and some of those shouldn't lose these games that you've seen throughout the last 20 years or so that I constantly harp on, that I believe this year. And so, of course, my heart's open. I'm ready to be hurt again, as you might hear. And I believe in this team. I believe enough in this team that I would be disappointed if they don't win a game in the playoffs.
Lance, with all of what we've said about Miami, obviously having the advantage there in the trenches substantially, how do you expect Brom to combat? And it's not like, obviously their O-line has not been good, but this is a whole different animal than what they've seen. So how do you expect Brom to combat that in terms of getting the ball out of Moss's hands quickly?
Yeah, Pete the Pro there. We didn't even do a run up, and that's one of the questions I, would hope that you'd ask me. So I broke down Louisville's passing game this year and the way that they are attacking teams because Brom knows his offensive line isn't great, right? And he's been tinkering, he's been working on ways to improve that. I've already kind of talked about one of the ways that but I even broke down the percentages of the way that they attack. Right now, this passing game they want to beat you with volume and efficiency rather than explosives because they don't have the offensive line to set up those 5 and 7 step dropbacks to go deep. So what they're really doing right now is about 15% of their throws are behind the line of scrimmage. Those are primarily made up of bubbles and tunnels, screens to the slot, and then swings to the running back. So what they do so well is everything looks the same and they run dramatically different plays out of that same look. So they will run 2, 3 of those tunnel bubbles to you, and it'll look exactly like the play will look exactly like the formation will look exactly the same. And then they'll run a swing to the running back on the other side out of the exact same look where your defense is running to that tunnel or that bubble that you've given up 7 yards on a couple of times, right? So that really stretches the defense and stresses the defense horizontally. So your outside players really have to tackle against this team. That's going to be very much important, especially against the slot. They really love to throw those screens to the slot. And then about 45% of their passing game is set up in that short passing game, that 0 to 9 yards area, so that they get the ball out of Miller's hands just as fast as possible, right? So they're running quick outs to the slot. That's something they love to do. They really love to get inside releases to the slot. And then again, it looks the exact same. They've had an inside release. They've had an inside release. They've had an inside release. And now they're trying to hit a quick out, and they save that play for like those big spots, those 3rd and 3s, those 3rd and 4s, where you overcommit to an inside release again. Now they have an open quick out. It's easy money. They really, really frustrate defenses by sustaining with that efficiency. They love to run hitches to the boundary. We've talked about Chris Bell. I've been listening to the show. You guys have already kind of brought him up. He is a problem on the boundary, and he presents real and true issues for a defense out there just because of the way he attacks the football. He is different from just a body. He attacks the football in a way that we have not seen this year. I know that Deuce Robinson gave Miami a little bit of trouble, especially Xavier Lucas in that game. I wouldn't say he dominated or anything, but he gave him trouble. Bell is better than him, in my opinion. I believe he's more athletic. I believe he has abilities to hit those comebacks just a little bit more. And so you don't need a long time to throw those timing routes, which is something that Brom has really gotten down to, a fine art. And then they love to run those sticks and choice routes to the slot tight end. So they will really put a tight end in the slot out of 11 personnel often. And what they want to do with that individual is make it look the exact same again, right? And they'll run choice stick on money downs, those 0 to 5 yard area. Very difficult to cover because they can run duo inside zone, split zone out of that same look. And on a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, you can still run the ball. And that's absolutely what their offense is predicated on. But where they separate, right? Because lots of offenses are short game, quick game, screen game type offenses. You see that everywhere, right, with spread. But where they really make their money is in the intermediate area. I believe the Louisville offense is very similar to the Miami Dolphins offense, believe it or not. And as all of us, in the Miami fans tend to watch the NFL side of things as well, those crossers, those digs, the middle of the field, the intermediate area that, Tua and the Dolphins love to live, that's exactly what Louisville does. But there's a key difference in the fact that they are elite at the back shoulder game to the boundary, to Bell. So Bell really, really runs that fade and the vertical shots to the boundary, as well as any receiver I've seen in the college game this year. But what separates him is he's elite at the back shoulder. It's almost impossible to cover because he can do both so well. You do tend to have to bracket him on like 3rd and 12s and things like that, or he'll just eat you up with that back shoulder. So that's really a long-winded way of saying what Louisville looks to do. And then they will throw in max protect, 7, 8, and then only put 2 out into the route. They'll really run condensed splits on short yardage. And then they'll try and do those vertical shots. They'll try and hit those shot plays against you in those situations, knowing that they're going to go for it on 4th down probably anyway if it's incomplete. We kind of talked with Steve just a little bit earlier about how they've missed those. But, they hit 2 of those in a game. That can change a game, right? And that's going to be something that you're going to see a lot of in this particular game, I believe. I believe they're going to run more condensed. They're going to run more 12 and feature both of those tight ends at the same time and really stress the Miami linebackers as well as their safeties to see them cover in that intermediate area.
Yeah, max protect. I mean, that's, to me, when you have a dominant receiver like they do and you have so much trouble on the edges, that to me makes a lot of sense. Pete compared Bell to A.J. Brown really early in the season. I remember thinking I see it from a size perspective. We know he has speed. Is he are his ball skills that good? I think you've laid out, he's shown incredible ball skills. He's been a target monster. And really, again, I couldn't be more impressed with what he's put on film. On the defensive side, Louisville's defense, Lance, they have good numbers, right? And watching them last year when we played them, watching them this year, from a personnel standpoint, I'm not enamored with how they get down. I don't see a lot of speed and physicality. I see a lot of missed tackles on the back end. I don't see a ton of size. You do have some pretty good pass rushers, but 50's a smaller guy. I think back to the game last year, and maybe this is just stuck in my memory, where Damian Martinez really big boyed him multiple times. And I was like, is this really a Louisville defense like we saw with Charlie Strong that had a lot of maybe undersized but very fast, very physical NFL type guys on that defense? Statistically, they're good. Personnel wise, I'm not convinced. Is the truth in the middle, or are they as good as their stats? Where are you with this Louisville defense as far as matching up against a team and personnel like Miami?
Yeah, definitely in the middle, right? I think they're much improved. I think last year they were probably one of the 10 worst P4, defenses that you were going to see. This year, they added a transfer. They added a transfer from Coastal Carolina, I believe, on the edge. He leads their team in sacks. He does a pretty good job of getting upfield. Where they're going to really apply pressure is going to be on the edges. I think Miami matches up pretty well with that. But what Louisville is doing this year, it's very similar to what Miami is doing, actually, where they're running a lot of the 4-2-5 type things. But they're also running light boxes and wanting the defense to try and run into those light boxes. They're really inviting the offense. They're really inviting the offense to run into those light boxes, but then they're changing the picture post snap to where they're inserting a star or a nickel linebacker into the fit. So now what looked like a light box, they actually have leverage or numbers whenever you run into it. They do a lot of the same things that Miami's trying to do, where, the interior is trying to cross face and push or stress a running back to go back into where the defensive leverage is, even though they don't have a stacked box. They have leverage from their fits. And their defense is very similar to what Heatherman's running for Miami. They just don't have the personnel that Miami has, right? One thing I've seen that Louisville is doing more and more is they're running bear fronts and pinching on the interior, right? For Miami, that may be a strong matchup, right? Where because Miami runs those tight splits, right, and they have so much power, I think Miami can stay on schedule and maybe even be able to hit some outside runs or some off tackle runs against those looks. Whenever they do the same thing that Louisville does on offense, right? They run the same plays out of the same look 4 or 5 times. Louisville kind of attacks it, and maybe it takes a false step, and then you might have an explosive run or two in that game. I think where Louisville has separated, and what the data will tell you is it may not always be sticky, is they've really dominated in the red zone. They've prevented touchdowns from their opponents at an absurdly large percentage. That's probably not going to hold up, throughout the entire year. But that's one area that'll be a key to this game when Miami does get, down into the 30-plus range. Are they settling for field goals, or are they getting touchdowns? And I think that's probably going to be where you see Miami in the run game really make a separator, is just the fact that they have that physical offensive line. I think this is a game where Beck could absolutely put up numbers. Louisville's not a great secondary. They're not a great team in the pass game. They rely on getting pressure with 4 or inserting a star into the package, very similar creeper type thing. But instead of using a safety as much as Heatherman does, they use more of a star linebacker, stand him up, insert him late, things along those lines. They really want to change that picture, after the post snap. And so those are some of the things that I'm seeing from Louisville on defense that I think Miami can attack. This is a game that could be a Malachi Toney blow-up game.
Like the rest of the games.
Right, like every game, right? But Louisville has really struggled with slot receivers, and they've been trying to match up with a bigger player against the slot, and that's not going to work against Toney. He has that short area quickness and explosiveness that if they do attempt to do that, he's going to eat all game. But if Louisville then goes away from what has been working for them and moves away from that larger, big nickel, how does that impact their run defense? So I think Miami can score on Louisville. I don't have any doubts that Miami can put 30-plus up in this game. It'll just be about, scoring touchdowns in the red zone. And when Louisville has the ball, do we avoid them hitting on some of those shot plays?
So Lance, if you're watching Miami's defense, which you have watched every play, and you're preparing a generic scouting report, so forget the individual matchups. In this case, we're talking about Louisville and their specific personnel, but just in general, you're evaluating Miami's defense and how you would attack it generally, the personnel you'd like to have if you wanted to attack this kind of defense, the weak spots, the things that they struggle with. What's on your generic, not Louisville specific, but just overall scouting report of Miami's defense and where it could potentially be vulnerable?
Yeah, so I am keeping in a tight end as a, either what we call a sniffer, just off the hip of the right tackle, or just line him up directly, as a slot player, just off the hip of the right tackle so that I can help with Bang. I'm not going to allow Bang to wreck my team, my game plan off my right tackle. My right tackle tends to be a little bit worse than my left tackle in the college game anyway, and Bang has just absolutely ruined games for opposing offenses. That's the first thing. Bane will probably still win a lot of them, right? But I absolutely am keeping help in for Bane as much as possible and not relying on my running back to try and, help against a Ruben Bane. That's first. Second, I'm attacking our linebackers in coverage. I really think they've done a good job of coming forward this year. I think they've been physical. I've really strongly been happy with the linebackers, but linebackers in coverage is absolutely an area that I'm going to be attacking against this team, and I'm going to do it with a lot of misdirection, right? I'm going to run leaks. I'm going to run choice routes. I'm going to do what Florida State did, where I, run two players into one zone and see if I can get them confused, where two take one and one bust free. Those are going to be a lot of things that I'm working on. I'm going to really be working to do I'm going to attack the middle of our defense. I believe we're good at defensive tackle, but I wouldn't say that we're elite, and we can do that through.
They're going to come at you, Lance. When I say the same thing, they call me all sorts of names, so be careful.
If they're not calling you a name every once in a while, you're probably not being critical enough. And so I'm not saying they're bad, right? It's like I tell my kids, because I say someone's good doesn't mean I'm saying you're bad, right? I just think that Miami is so good on the edges. You almost have to be worse at defensive tackle unless you're just an all-American defensive line. And so I do think they're a little bit worse at the defensive tackle position. I think we've seen some instances out of Blay, especially where he's peeking or gets on the wrong shoulder and allows, a quarterback to escape or a draw play to work because he's maybe losing discipline in his rush lanes a little bit. So those are some areas that I would absolutely attack. And then, we have lost deep sometimes this year on the outside. They haven't always hit it. I've seen open receivers on the outside deep at times this year, and they haven't always hit it, but they've been there. I feel like late separation on our cornerbacks has something that has happened more than once this year where, they're in phase, but as the ball's in the air, maybe they either lack the confidence or maybe just that one deep speed step to where you see just late separation for the receiver. And I think Bell's the type of guy who can do that. He actually is very good at that type of thing. So not just Louisville, but overall, if I'm an offense game planning in general for this Miami defense, that's what I'm looking to do. A lot easier said than done when you're facing, some of the talent they have, though.
Lance, question. After the first bye, did you see anything show up schematically that you had not seen previously? And I guess, my follow-up to that would be like, do you expect to see some more stuff thrown in there? People have commented, hey, you think the offense is going to open up, so to speak? I've said I don't think there's going to be much difference from what we've seen as a whole, but any nuances that you saw them kind of throw in there after the first bye where they had some time to kind of assess what they'd seen in terms of the film, and then is that possibly something you can see here?
Yeah, so defensively, no, they really haven't changed too much in their overall scheme. What you're seeing more is they're using more of their depth, right? They're starting to work in more of the young players. That's one of the changes I've seen. Maybe they're going to Aguirre a little bit more or Chase Smith a little bit more. They're really just kind of mixing and matching their utilization a little bit. They're running a very similar scheme most of the time. It is a pretty simple scheme. I think that's by design so that you can just basically allow the players to play fast. And as long as they're matching up post snap, that's really where more of the nuance of this defense is post snap, where they have to, do their match. Something I'm seeing a little more split field coverages than what I've seen in the past. And what I mean by that is maybe cover 4 on one side, cover 2 on another, or maybe man on one side and zone on the other. I'm seeing that just a little bit more. It's a small nuance that you really kind of have to know what you're looking at to be able to see that. It's nothing that's dramatic. I am seeing that just a little bit more. Offensively, no, I mean, they're running kind of the same things. They live on mesh. They live on inside zone. Malachi Toney, one thing that's different with him than what I've seen in some past years is he runs an elite whip route, one of the best whip routes you'll ever see. We didn't run a lot of whips previously, probably because we didn't have the personnel, not a slam on Xavier Restrepo, but that wouldn't be a route that he would excel at necessarily. He really more excelled at the technical aspects than just being a better athlete than you, like the whip route can tend to be, right? Toney can get back out in 2 steps faster than you will see just about anybody on that route. It's a route I love, so I've kind of looked at it quite a bit. I love the smash. You've probably heard me on this podcast say that before. Well, with smash, you can run slants, you can run, inside breakers, you can run a stop. I love it with a whip. That's absolutely what I love to run smash with. And with Toney being so awesome at it and Daniels being so great at a corner, I would love to see more smash with those two from the same side and let Toney run that whip all day. So that's kind of some of the nuances that you're seeing. You're seeing evolution we've moved away from the wham, probably because we don't run it real well, quite honestly. We ran that 5, 6, 7 times against Notre Dame. And, you have not seen it to that level since then. We've really been running that 2, 3 times. We ran Lofton, as the wham or as the lead in that Notre Dame game several times. We also ran a motion where the wide receiver would turn into the lead 3 different times in that game. And we haven't been running that as much either. We've adjusted away from that split and inside zone to more duo and a little bit more outside runs. We saw 3 or 4 in this last game, which would have been probably as many as you had seen all year previous to that. So maybe that was game plan specific against Florida State. Maybe they saw something in that game that led them to do that. But that was something that definitely showed up on film when I looked at it.
Yeah, a couple things on that. With the mentioned Lofton, we always talk about because he's someone I hype forever, and the fans been waiting to see him play. The coaches hyped him. Yeah, I thought on those kind of collision blocks, those wham blocks, those lead blocks, he was so much better last year than this year. So that's one area. We talk about the speed after the catch and all that. I think that's one area where you see the injuries hold him back, and that's one area that if he does get healthier, that part of his game improves, it opens up a lot of the options you talked about. You mentioned defensive tackle. Pete kind of threw that line at me about, I think they're elite. I don't think they're elite. You're right. They're not elite. And what it's interesting to me as I think about it is, are there really elite defensive tackles in college football right now? I was racking my brain while we were talking. It's like there used to be, Georgia would have 3 alone, right? Yeah. But now you look at, I was racking my brain because we stopped Jeremiah Love. We stopped Jaden Baugh. We stopped some pretty high-profile running backs, stopped FSU's running game, which was very prolific entering that game. And it's like USF, same thing. So there's good play there. I agree. They're not first-round kind of guys. When you look at the country, I saw Peter Woods, I think, is the top defensive tackle still. He's not having a great year for Clemson. The guy from Oregon, number 52, talented guy, but it's not like he has a huge track record. He's taken over games. Is this just a position that's just down across the country?
Yeah, you bring up a good point there. That's absolutely fair. We can say that, Miami doesn't have a dominant, elite inside interior defensive line, but then you ask a great question. Who does, right? In today's game, who has 320-pound defensive tackles who have a great get off and can, anchor a double team and rush the passer? You're not seeing much of that this year. You see Kuiper's projections. I'm not into draft mode yet, so I haven't really gotten into that. With being a Dolphins fan, I'm always in draft mode. It feels
yeah, we better be in draft mode.
Yeah, exactly. But I haven't seen anywhere near the level of defensive tackle play you saw last year, where 5 went in the first round. I don't believe this is that kind of year. To push back or to kind of give you where I'm coming from with that just a little bit more, I'm seeing Miami defensive tackles blocked one-on-one by centers too often. That should not be happening in this defense. This defense in particular needs the defensive tackle, the nose tackle, the anchor to beat the center one-on-one and force the offense to have to block him with 2. Against Florida State, we did not do that. They blocked us one-on-one with that center all game. And he did an okay job of it. I highlighted times when their center won, and I highlighted times where our defensive tackle won. That's going to happen in a game, right? Where oftentimes, as fans, we say, well, that guy disappeared, right? Where he only had 2 pressures or didn't have a bunch of sacks in a game. If you get 1 sack a game, you're going to New York for the Heisman ceremony, right? So these guys aren't going to get sacks every game. They're not going to pressure the quarterback relentlessly. I just need them to win 2-3 times in pass rush, and I need them to win 4 or 5 times in the run game. And what I mean by win is defeat a one-on-one block to where a running back has to either change or get a tackle for loss, right? And right now I'm not seeing a ton of that out of our players. I'm seeing a lot more of stalemates than I would like to see.
Before I kick it to Pete for his question, how long do we have you before you get back to real number crunching?
About 10 more minutes.
10 minutes. All right, Pete, get the mic.
I was just going to say, I think with the position too, it's one of those for the NFL that is so traits oriented that a lot of times there's guys that, to your point, Lance, you maybe don't hear about them because they aren't getting the stats. They maybe don't play for a team that's all that good. That happens a lot of times with that position as well. But yeah, I think it's a solid group. I think more than anything, man, it's and not to beat a dead horse here on what my opinion's been on it, but I don't see too much depth there, Lance. Like I can argue that the guys who have played it have done a solid job, and like they aren't obviously messing up what the defense has going. But and yes, we can say this about any other team. I know the simple thing to say is, well, if one of these top 10 teams loses a defensive tackle, they're going to have depth issues as well. I get it, but I don't care about those teams. I care about Miami, and I'm looking at what Miami has. You're going to need someone to step up there. Justin Scott hasn't played a whole lot of snaps. I think they're waiting for that consistency to come on from him. But I think for me, I think that group is more than serviceable. I think it's a really solid group, really, really good group. But the depth is what concerns me.
Yeah, right now it's probably a 7 or 8 group. You take an injury to Blay or Moten, you're looking at a 5 or 6 group, and that's a big drop off, right? You're talking about a team where earlier I was opining about the fact that they've got a physical advantage over every opponent, right? Now you take one of those guys away and you replace them with somebody who's maybe not ready to play 40 snaps, 30 snaps in a game. And you could really see that be so impactful that they have to change the way they play defense, right? That is absolutely a concern for this team. And you're right. It's also a concern. Can you imagine if Bain or Messidor got hurt? Like those guys are playing 50 plus snaps. I made a little post about
70 a couple games ago, right?
I mean, it's absurd how much, in Messidor in particular is just playing, like some game numbers that are out of control. You are seeing Blunt really develop. He's starting to be a player that's like a 5 or a 6 starter. And you're going to hear a 5 or a 6 and think that's poor. That's not poor. For a starting ACC top 10 team, that's good. He just has been prone to little mistakes and penalties. That's something that he needs to continue to clean up, be a little bit smarter with his hands. He's gotten outside of his frame a little bit, grabbed a face mask, gotten into a fight, or when you get your hands outside, you can be steered. And that's something that, I really get technical with the lines where you've got to keep your shoulders and your balance center of mass at that position to be able to play both sides. And Blunt's gotten off just a little bit. And then behind that, who, right? You're looking at a true freshman most likely at this point. Now, Justin Scott has made 2 of the best plays this defense has seen all year. I've highlighted both of them. I've talked about how impactful they are. But there are 70 other plays in a game. And right now you're not seeing the consistency from him at all. I've actually been pretty disappointed in him in the run game in particular. I felt like he's been moved a little bit more than I want to see. And he really gets stuck on blocks. We call that a Hoover, right? Where he's just kind of stuck to the guy, vacuumed to the guy in front of him. That's something that I've seen from Scott, that he's got to unlock his hands a little bit to be able to go to the next level. So defensive tackle, if you're talking about a place where you pray not to get hurt, that's definitely one of the top of the list.
Yeah, I think, and this is not sometimes maybe a great this is not a very positive thing, but I think there's some JoJo going on there, except with Justin Scott, where they just want to see more. He needs to be more consistent day in, day out, and I think that out of necessity, he's still playing, right? Because it's not like receiver where you have some other options there that you can trust. But you're going to need him. You're going to need that. You're going to need him to really turn that light on. I think for this defense, we talk a lot. We're talking about JoJo on the other side. Hey, who's going to be that third consistent option offensively? I think we need to ask that similar question when it comes to the D tackle spot.
It's funny though with Scott. You mentioned his weakness. I agree totally. David Blade's like the total opposite, because I feel Blade gets better when he's pounded. That's when his leverage starts getting better, his movement. He's one of these squirrely kind of guys, and a big body, knows how to use his hands, obviously. It's like if you combine those 2, first-round pick, the exact guy that we're talking about, right? But obviously it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You're a spreadsheet guy. You're a numbers guy. I wanted to ask you this question, something I've kicked around the show, but not when you've been on. So I want to bring it up, which is, we live in a quasi-salary cap era. I know that's a moving target, but let's just assume the obvious, which is that resources are limited. You can't just spend money on every player, right? This season, to me, which is our first season being good in a while, really truly good, and then all the new age college football stuff happening at the same time, shows me that it really, to me, makes much more sense to invest big money, potentially overpay in the field tilting players, guys that are true difference makers, and I would add are clean off the field, because it's sunk costs if they screw up. These are teenagers for the most part, young college kids. It makes more sense to overpay those guys than to get a lot of pretty expensive coin flip guys who could be good, meaning Ruben Bain. I know he's clean off the field. I know he's dominant. Boom. Malachi Toney. Boom. Francis Malinois. Boom. Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State. As opposed to just trying to build with a lower class of player that's still a high-ranking, expensive recruit that you're not positive on and you're not sure has that game tilting ability. That's how I'm seeing the budget as I'm looking at this more. You just fill in the rest of the spots with solid guys, maybe veteran portal guys that aren't going pro. How do you see team building now that you've had more data and more evidence to just kind of go off and see how to build a team in the modern era of college football?
Yeah, it's a good question. I always like to look at things as availability of substitutes, right? What is the finite amount that I am able to, replace that person? If I don't spend on X, how many Y's are there out there to, fill in for that place? Defensive tackle is one of those spots to me. I would absolutely overpay for a proven defensive tackle in the transfer portal all day long. And then I'm going to pay to keep anybody on my team at that position that has shown the ability to give me 30, 40 impactful snaps. And I'm talking about impactful, right? The number one place that you can wreck an offense is just right up the middle, right? Quarterbacks are uncomfortable with that. It's more difficult to help in those areas. If you can wreck an interior of an offensive line, you will change the way that offense has to play all game long. I'm absolutely paying money there. You and I, we talk offline. I'm a quarterback guy. I believe you must have an impactful quarterback who can make the wrong play right in a play, right? Whether he does that through his mind, whether he does that through his accuracy, or if he's, one of these elite athletes who can just play off script, right? I got to have one of those three out of my quarterback. I can never go through a year where I'm compensating for my quarterback. I'm making up for my quarterback's limitations. I just don't believe that you can consistently do that. Miami's not that type of program right now. Maybe if you were a Georgia where you had 5 years of 5 stars being stacked, you might be able to do something like that. And we're seeing them do some of that with Gunnar Stockton, right? He's a solid player, but maybe not a great player. And that's those are the two areas that I'm absolutely going to spend money. And then I'm going to spend money on
before you get off quarterback, because I want to get your thoughts on another thing we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
When you talk about having to have that quarterback with those abilities and not being able to compensate for them, there are some elite quarterbacks, some of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen play football, that at one point their team was compensating for them if they started early in their career, right? I mean, because a young quarterback, you're compensating for him no matter how talented he is. So would you invest in a young, let's say top 3 type quarterback? So elite talent, high track record of success for guys that are in that elite ranking out of high school, and you kind of live with him a little bit, but you have multiple years of eligibility. Maybe you can recruit off him a little bit too because of his star power. Or do you go with someone who's already had those growing pains, and then you are not only counting on him to do his job, but also to be someone you don't have to worry about and that's going to make other people better because he's already gone through the growing pains? So basically veteran portal quarterback versus young phenom quarterback in terms of scarce resources.
Yeah, I'm probably going to hear about this, but I go for the veteran portal guy all day long. I just think my return on investment is so much higher in those situations because the bust rate is much more for the young guy. Plus, I believe that on average, those players tend to expect to play early, and they may not always be ready, but you still have to play because you paid them. You've already put a chunk of your budget towards them. Your team now sees a player that maybe isn't quite ready, who's getting paid, the $3-4 million, right? I personally grow 3 stars as my backups, hope one pops, and where I don't have to have a portal quarterback every year. And then I layer on top more of a sure thing. Nobody's a sure thing, but I definitely continue down the road that Miami has shown recently with the Cam Ward, the Carson Beck. And then next year, I'm looking at a CJ Bailey or somebody like that to bring them in where they've gone through those growing pains. And I know I've got a much higher chance of getting a return on my investment. For me personally, I have seen the number one quarterback bust many times coming out of high school. You look at any top 10 list and it's probably 3 hits and 7 misses most years, right? What I would call a hit, where I'm better off with that guy for 2 years than I am for 1 year of Carson Beck, plus the next year I just replaced them. Because it's not like it's 1 year of Beck and nobody the next year, right? I can go back and then do it again.
Let's do it again. I cut you off before that because I wanted to get that, and that was a great answer. The last part that you spend money on.
Yeah, last part I spend money on is corner. I got to have coverage, guys. I can manufacture separation opening for wide receivers. I don't need a Jeremiah Smith in today's game, but I do need somebody on the outside that I can play man with at times and live with, blitzing.
There he is, GM, the professor, Hurricane Vision himself, Lance Roffers. Check him out on CanesInSight.com with his upon further review and on Twitter, Hurricane Vision. You're the man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Lance.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Always good, man. And we're about to – I'll let you set up here for the next phase of the show because for those who don't know, around this time, we're already at about almost hour 2. I'd like to talk some general college football. We got over 1,500 on guys that like to talk, guys and gals in the chat that like to talk college football, that watch all the games, not just the Canes. We talked about the Canes plenty here, and we will continue to do so. But I want to just talk about, different types of teams, learn the game more so we get to know more about the Canes because we have college football in context and all of that. And we will be bringing on a very special guest for that. But wait, bring him back. Get him out. Fink, you brought him in early. I set you up. I tricked you with the intro because I can't do this advertisement when Fink's on because I don't think Fink is old enough to drink. So we got to leave.
Just turned 21.
Oh, we just turned him 21. All right, bring him back. Fink. So you're 21, so now you can do this ad as we talk about my friends at BUZZN. Drink, BUZZN. That is 7.5 milligram real THC infused seltzer. First 50 for 50% off of BUZZN. Again, that's BUZZN. All hang, no hangover. BUZZN, BUZZN. Also want to talk about KashKick. KashKick, one of the top apps in the country. If you're a college student like my man Fink or just someone who likes to play games on your phone, download the KashKick app, one of the top apps, number 4 lifestyle app in the country, ahead of Pinterest. Millions of downloads, totally legit. Download it on your app store. You get all these games on your phone, consolidated. Plus, as you pay, you earn money from advertisers. And with the Play It Forward campaign, you also get a matching donation from the advertisers to the American Cancer Society, the rare triple win, KashKick, KashKick, on the App Store. All right, with all of that, the man himself, the Fink. How we doing?
Good. How are y'all?
Doing well, man.
Doing excellent. Your shirt's not getting a lot of good reviews, but you're balancing it out. So now people know it's a national show, even as we work Canes here in the home of the Hurricanes of Duffy's. As we switch to national coverage here with Group Chat Sports. If you guys are not on Group Chat Sports, we're over 2,000 subscribers. Fink went viral the other day with his video on the third string USC running back who is taking the world by storm and is a really, really impressive former walk-on there. So Group Chat Sports, check it on YouTube, like and subscribe. We're talking all college football, all kinds of transactions, which we will be doing right here. So Fink, you've been in the lab, you've been working. What's jumped out to you from college football as far as just it could be a young player, a trend? What are you seeing that you want to hit on here as we get ready for Saturday?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of true freshman trios I think we need to talk about. We talked last episode about some of the groups on the CFP caliber teams, and Oregon, had a really impressive group. I think Finney had another strong game this week. So that's a really impressive group. And and obviously you're not going to you're not going to hear about programs like Duke and Maryland when we're talking about the college football playoff, although Duke's got a pretty good team, I got to say. And so does Maryland, to be honest. These two programs have a couple of really impressive true freshmen. I think maybe Maryland more so than Duke, but Duke's got two guys who've really been starting to get a little bit more reps. I think we should start with the star for the Blue Devil team, their running back, Nate Shepard. This guy, he's been electric this year. Leads all true freshmen with 447 rushing yards, 8 yards per carry, forcing 19 missed tackles, which is the most among Power 4 true freshmen. He's been awesome. He's had a few massive games where he's just gone off for over 100 yards, and Duke's kind of trusting him and Mensa to just run their offense through those two guys.
Yeah, and you look at Shepard, a lot of indicators here that you're used to seeing with guys that maybe overplay their ranking. He was not a low-ranked player by any means. He was an 89 on the composite, so a 4-star on the composite. 247 had him basically ranked the same as an 89, although technically he was a 3-star. So basically, you would talk about a borderline 3-star, 4-star player, which if you're Duke, that's great as we watch him here operating. But you look at play basketball, right? Even though basketball running back, you don't see a ton of translation there. He's obviously an athlete. 110-meter hurdles. Runs the 100 meters, doesn't have a great 100-meter time, but long jump over 22, which that 22 number, once you get over that, you got some explosiveness to you. And again, just the activity, look at the bloodlines. His dad was a defensive back for Louisiana Tech. His mother was a Louisiana Tech volleyball player. His brother, Will Shepard, we remember him at Vanderbilt producing over there, having a really, really good career, then going to Colorado with Deion Sanders. So it's like, I think when you look at some of these things, and Peter, you know we do this all the time, it's like you try to find trends with players that overperform. And with this guy, his background, he has the genetics box and the just overall athleticism blocks, plus his running back highlights coming out of Mandeville in Louisiana, which is a running back haven down there in Louisiana. A lot of that checks out.
Yeah, sorry, Clay. I was just saying he's big boy, man. He's I think listed at 200 coming out of high school. Duke doesn't have his official weight on the website there, but 5'10" you're thinking a smaller back. He does not look that at all when you see it run.
Yeah, no, I watched a few clips of him at Duke, and I noticed the same thing. His weight is not on Duke's roster, which is really dumb, but whatever. I was expecting him to run a little bit differently than he does for the 5'10" frame and 200 out of high school. I think he's a relatively well-rounded back. I think he can kind of do a little bit of everything. You're seeing it here, but he's breaking some long runs. He's got pretty good contact balance. The vision spulls over that defender. The vision stood out in the Syracuse game I watched. I think that's the one where he went for like 160 rushing yards. So kind of a breakout game for Shepard. And I think he's finally getting some of that national notice. I believe he was put on the On3 midseason true freshman All-American team with Bo Jackson, the running back out of Ohio State, joining him. So we'll see what they've got. But if they can keep him around, that's kind of potentially your bell cow back for the next few years in Durham. And you still have eligibility from Mensa, obviously. So they've got something building over there. And I think it seems like they have the financial commitment to maybe keep surrounding them with, talent of this caliber.
Yeah, big game this weekend, obviously. You see, Joel loves your minimalist. Who made the ledge? Which picks made the ledge for the?
Let's see. I got a picture of me with my two dogs, and I've got a picture of me with my grandparents at my graduation party from high school.
There you
Very
go.
wholesome.
Yeah,
I do need to cover. My mom was making fun of me for this, electrical box thing. So I got some paintings and stuff.
Yeah, get a painting over that.
I got to cover that up.
But Duke, obviously, huge game with Georgia Tech this weekend with national championship implications. Another guy that caught my attention just because watching the game, man, this dude was flying all over, is Elliot Shaper. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Big linebacker, 6'3", 210, coming out of Austin, Texas, Westlake. So big squad. Did Drew Brees go to Austin, Westlake, or Baker Mayfield? There's some
West,
big, I believe some big dudes have come out of Austin Texas and Westlake in particular. So this is not a sleeper from a place where scouts don't go. He was a Central Texas defensive player.
Nick Foles, Justin Tucker, Sam Ellinger.
So they're not exactly, off the map. Central Texas Defensive Player of the Year. Other schools involved, Wisconsin, Cal, but Duke gets it done. Manny Diaz, being a linebacker coach by trade, loves a guy like this, and he's got this guy playing early as a freshman. The instincts stand out to me of the versatility. What do you see when you see Shaper?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get a chance to watch a ton of him compared to the other guy we're going to talk about on defense, but man, I definitely need to, because if it's anything like these high school highlights, the instincts, the quick trigger, the closing speed. I mean, he's taking on these blocks with so much energy. Man, this is a really good player. This is kind of exactly what you want to see from a high school linebacker. So I'll have to watch a little bit more of him. He had a much expanded role against Cal, playing like 50 snaps after only having played like 25 up to this point in the year. So we're going to get a chance, I think, probably to see a lot more of him throughout this year. But
and that's why I highlighted him.
Seeing more.
No, but that's why I highlighted him, because he caught my attention. Number 31, just like he is here in these high school highlights. He's number 31 for Duke. And you watch that game, you see him get 2 sacks on JKS, and he also had an interception. So he was just one of those guys that, watching the game, you're like, who is 31? I actually have a friend that works with Duke. I texted him, like, man, who's 31? Because he kept showing up. But yeah, you're right. He didn't have a huge role until the last couple of weeks. But I have to imagine, when you get extended time and you get 2 sacks and a pick in a huge win over Cal, your role is going to continue to expand. That's a true freshman with some size and instincts.
And he wasn't even the highest rated linebacker in their class last year. Bradley Gompers, who was a guy that Miami really wanted at a certain point there. I believe he was from Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh, yeah. So he's another guy, 6'5", 225. That they've got some good body types that we're trying to stack up there.
Yeah, and we should talk about Gompers too, because he's another one. He also played against Cal. You saw him on the field. He's number 24. Just like I just kept writing down numbers, and then when I looked them up, they were all freshmen, which is why we did this segment. But Gompers is somebody that was a super athlete coming out, 4-star player. I believe he was the number 3 athlete in the country, according to 247 Sports. 189 on the composite. But yeah, he had some big schools after him. Taller than Shaper, 6'5", 215, lean guy, played offense, played defense. Basketball, he was like throwing down crazy dunks. Yeah, he was throwing down crazy dunks. So you look at Manny, how he gets down. He likes linebackers to make tackles for loss. His linebackers always had great stats. They get behind the line of scrimmage for tackles for loss. They get sacks. So I think when you have Shaper and Gompers together as athletic guys who can not only run sideline to sideline, but can get after it behind a line of scrimmage. Pittsburgh guy and Austin guy, again, these are not places where they're mysteries. Gompers was a 4-star player. Kudos to Manny for not only identifying the right guys, but convincing them that, hey, if you go to Duke, you're going to play winning football, you're going to compete for conference championships, and you're going to be able to make a lot of plays behind a line of scrimmage.
Ooh.
There you go.
You said, you knew that was gonna be. You knew that was gonna be a good one.
I think I might have watched some of this kid's tape. I remember just the stat sheet stuffing was totally insane. That he flashed some of his stats at the start there.
Well, I remember him because I remember when Miami had offered. Canes fans were kind of like, well, what are we doing here? We're offering a linebacker committed to Duke. Who is this guy? And then you started looking into it and said, hey, this guy's first of all, pretty highly rated player, and then you look at the size, the speed, the tape kind of just speaks for itself. So
Penn State was in on this one. We're going to talk about Penn State's commitment list in a minute, but Penn State likes guys like this, these versatile athletes. Obviously, this guy's from Pittsburgh, but the speed, the athleticism, and Manny was there. I really think as we go through this list and talk about some more guys that Manny brought in, I think he learned a lot about evaluation of players at Penn State. Because with his downfall as Miami's head coach, there were a few, but I think one of the big downfalls that he had at Miami was he just didn't evaluate well as the head coach. The linebacking play got way worse, not because of his coaching getting worse, just because his players he was coaching was getting worse. The defensive line, the quality of talent went down a lot under Manny Diaz as head coach at the University of Miami. Whereas I think going to Penn State and seeing how James Franklin built that into a monster defensive evaluation machine. he's taken some of that to Duke, and you're seeing instant results because he's going to have these two guys, if he could withstand the portal, Shaper and Gompers, for a long, long time. But they're not alone, right, on that defense.
Yeah, so they've got let's see, how do you say it? It's Andrew Peliciota, I think. Is their safety, true freshman. He's 5'11", 200-ish, and he's an 86.5 grade this year, which is over 10 points higher than any other true freshman safety in the country. And that mostly can be attributed to a pretty impressive pick he had this week against Cal. And yeah, I haven't gotten it.
Number 35.
He had a pass deflection as well. Yeah, number 35.
From Melbourne.
Yeah, he's another guy who's seen an expanded role in the last 2 weeks, getting 40 snaps against Syracuse and Cal combined. So Duke seems to be going with a bit of a youth movement, but yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch him outside of the Cal game, but man, you give these guys the reps and they make the plays that they were making in that game. I don't think we're going to see them, trend back downwards in terms of usage.
Yeah, and that Cal game, really, I mean, that's the reason why I brought up this segment, because all these guys just kind of jump to the spotlight. Who's 31, right? Who's 35? In 35's case, which is the safety, Malvern, Pennsylvania, so another Pennsylvania guy like Gompers, a place where Duke you wouldn't think would have a stronghold. But look at the rating of Peliciota, and I hope he's not watching this, or his family's not watching this, saying get the name right. But number 35, we'll call him because he's a stud. 85 ranking on the composite. You look at the other schools, Brown, Colgate, Army, Air Force. So there's academic stuff going on there. If you look at the other schools, I'm sure that was a factor in him going to Duke. Committed to Navy, ended up flipping to Duke. I sound like a broken record, but baseball player, middle infielder, perfect game ranking. So you get some of these guys that are versatile athletes. You put them in this Manny Diaz system that is all about making plays behind the line of scrimmage, playing fast, using your athleticism. You don't have to be the biggest guy in the world. And then maybe you get some smart guys because you're Duke and you're selling education, so you're pulling some of these guys. Seems like that's the formula for what Manny wants to do in building this team up to be a conference championship type team.
I think that's really the key for teams like Duke, Stanford, Cal, especially like just obviously the ACC isn't a recruiting powerhouse, but if you want to match up with some of these more high-level programs in your conference, you kind of have to have a pitch, and I think you have a pitch available for you with the academics. Like there's smart players at the top of every recruiting class that you can go and find who will want to play for that level of program. You think Josh Petty in last year's class ends up going to Georgia Tech, but he was considering Stanford heavily his entire recruiting process because he valued those academics. And ultimately, I mean, Georgia Tech isn't a slouch academically either. So I think that's the path. And yeah, guys, you can kind of see looking at the offer list with some of these guys, just how smart they are.
So I'm pulling up the huddle here because you have to go back and see the huddle, not just because it's copyright free, but also because if you want to see what it should look like, you got to see what it looks like in high school before they pop in a game like Cal. And here you see right away, what's the first thing you see? Running back highlight for a linebacker. We've seen a lot of correlation between, or he's a safety, but back seven player. Highlights are nice. Guys that either play safety or linebacker. Running back tends to be a pretty good transition. There you see him doing what he did against Cal and picking the ball off, and then when he turns right into the running back, I look at UNC, which is going on a totally different path than Duke. They're in-state rival.
Well, they just did flip a top corner from Miami.
They did, and they brought in some guys like this in their first class. But I think what Bill Belichick I thought could have done a better job of is, instead of going for the quick fix in a lot of things, just saying, hey, listen, this is what we're going to be. We're going to be how Jim Harbaugh was at Stanford, and we're going to be the smart kids team and recruit smart players that you can put a lot on them defensively, which Belichick's defense actually requires more than Nanny's defense. Nanny's defense is actually pretty simple. But with Belichick, you should be getting all the smart players. Some of those guys are four-star guys that want to just go to a good academic school. Sometimes you find guys like this that are diamonds in the rough, but just get smart players and be the smart kids program without compromising athleticism and all that stuff. And now you at least have an identity that you can build towards, whereas they're just kind of doing a hodgepodge. Manny, I think, is leaning into it and getting smart players that can take a screen to the house, and also knock people out on defense.
Yeah, no, I think this is probably the formula. I think Belichick probably approached it differently than I expected for sure. I definitely thought it would be something more similar to this. I was kind of surprised at not the star hunting in the portal, but definitely was more similar to like the approach that FSU took 2 years ago, where there were a lot of guys, it seemed like, coming to UNC who had some sort of recruiting pedigree. It seemed like they were just a little bit too confident in themselves. What was the story that came out the other day about Lombardi telling Chandler Morris that they didn't want him because he's not what an NFL quarterback looks like? You're not an NFL team anymore, man.
Right.
You're at North Carolina. So, and that's a guy who'd be winning games with you right now.
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
Instead, you sold out on a guy like Lopez, who I do think has some NFL upside, but is not nearly as much of a sure thing. Can't put as much on his plate. And yeah, I think Belichick could probably learn from his in-state rival.
And if he's making evals like this, these aren't just guys that are future players. These guys are making plays right now in the same conference.
This kid's big too.
Yeah.
Like he's
and you see the upside too. Like both of these guys that we've watched have really legit upside. Well, obviously the former top 150 recruit does, but the two guys we've talked about have really been getting some playing time. This isn't just early contributing guys. I think these are building blocks for the program.
Yeah, I mean, you see speed. You see athleticism. And I think when you deal with two-way guys who also play other sports and play a lot of different positions, I say two-way guys, really three-way guys, because here he is returning a punt. I mean, that's athleticism. And if he has enough size, clearly at safety he's going to have enough size. I wonder if there was a question of whether he might play linebacker, but he's getting it done at safety. He's got more than enough size there. So I love what Duke is doing. I was very, very impressed. The more just watching that Cal game, it just, you say, man, these guys are all freshmen. These are numbers I was writing down to figure out, like, are these guys draft eligible? Like, who are these guys? And then you look them up and you see that FR. So bright future ahead. Obviously, Darian Mensah, quarterback, that's sort of a right now deal. But they got it cooking right now. I see Manny's name on some Penn State lists. I'm not sure that's the direction I'd go if I was Penn State and just bought out James Franklin for all that money. But he's got a lot of fans in that building, and I think he really learned a lot from Penn State, because Penn State would get guys like this.
Yeah, they've got something building over there for sure.
So, Clay, we're talking about Duke. There's another group of freshmen at a maybe more what you call a basketball power historically, like Duke, that is making waves on the football field with this freshman class. So tell me about what Maryland is doing that's really caught your attention.
Yeah, I think you could probably argue this is better than Oregon's true freshman class. Now, I will say I was looking down at Oregon's commitment list from last year, not to get sidetracked, but some of those guys that they haven't played yet that you kind of forgot about, like Offord was obviously higher rated than Finney. I was a big fan of Toby Hostrup. So they've got other guys who will play. I think this is a little bit more in terms of Oregon has high-level players who are playing over those guys. Maryland, maybe not so much. But they probably have the best trio in the country. I talked about the midseason freshman All-American list earlier. They're the only team that had 3 players on it. Only a handful of teams had 2 players on it. And that is 3 of the most important positions in the sport, or, well, 2 positions. You've got quarterback Malik Washington, who was a consensus top 100, borderline top 50 recruit in last year's class. Big frame, 6'5", 231. And then you've got this defensive end duo that's just been kind of a phenomenon for this team that I don't think they expected this whatsoever. But Sidney Stewart and Zahir Mathis have completely taken over. Yeah, you gotta scroll a little bit for Stewart, I think.
Right there.
Yeah. So he was he started off a little bit hotter than Mathis, but Mathis has kind of caught back up. And yeah, man, this is a really, really exciting trio, and I think Maryland fans have a lot to look forward to, especially with the number 2 recruit in the country committed for next year, who is another pass rusher. But yeah, so you've got Zahir Mathis. He's got 22 pressures this year, which leads all freshmen. Sidney Stewart has 21. The next most is 12. So these guys have started every game. They've played really well. They don't look like freshmen. Mathis brings some real pass rushing juice at 6'6", 225. So he's still got a lot of room to add weight. He's completely blown me away. I watched him pretty in depth because he was a late signing day guy who was pretty much expected across the industry to sign with FSU, and ends up getting a bag last minute from the hometown team, Maryland, who seems really committed to the defensive end position right now. And I kind of joked when he was a recruit, I thought he was pretty overrated. I thought this is a guy who's a couple years away from playing. The frame looks more like a Johnny Wilson coming out of high school or something. He did not look like a defensive end. And he really, according to the listed weight, hasn't put on that much weight. And he doesn't look that big on the field for Maryland. And it just doesn't matter, man. So you see why he was rated so high. He's a really impressive athlete. He's held his own in the run game surprisingly well. So Zahir Mathis has really surprised me. And then Sidney Stewart, you obviously are surprised by him, former 3-star, who's also just taken the reins at that position. Maryland brought in D.D. Holmes last minute in the transfer portal from FSU, who former 4-star, went to Gonzaga and D.C. I really liked him in practice last year, fully expected him to start. And these two come in a few months later and just immediately pass him by. So they've got a really, really impressive DN duo. And then Malik Washington, arguably probably the best true freshman quarterback in the country so far this year. Big frame, decent athlete, strong arm. Like this, I don't know what they paid for him. Obviously, he's not traveling across the country to get to Maryland or anything, but I imagine they had to drop a little bit of a bag for him, but I think it was money well spent so far. And this is kind of the type of guy that can really change your program. You know, it's sort of similar vibes to he's not this caliber of player, but Keyshawn Henderson sticking home at Houston. You know, these are the types of guys who can really revive a program and just set a trend and just keep getting these recruiting wins because they see all of these freshmen getting playing time. They much like Duke, I think they've got something building at Maryland. So Malik Washington, a lot of this has been reflected on film this year. He looks like he's hardly had to adjust to the college level.
Yeah, top 25 type class, but I think overperforming there. I would say, I agree with everything you said. I would just say in terms of solid athlete, I think he's a high end athlete.
Yeah, I think he probably is.
He's not a running quarterback.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
You talk about just on a testing standpoint, 6'4", 215 last time he measured. He looks bigger than that. 4.65 verified laser, 4.38 in the short shuttle. Winning quarterback, multiple championships. And then on the basketball court, again, there's a theme with this show, and this is at least with me, I always like to bring up the multi-sport stuff because in my experience, the best quarterbacks in the world are multi-sport athletes, or they're just pure runners like Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts, that are not pure runners, but guys that are legit star runners. This guy has the multi-sport part with the basketball. He's from an area in Maryland where basketball is king, and they have a lot of really, really good players there, and he was a really good basketball player. But you see the testing, you see the two-sport, and then you watch the film. He moves around. He's got size. This is an interesting program. And really, when you look at their class, Jalen Gilchrist, who was the star of the class besides Malik Washington from Virginia Beach, he's hurt right now, but you look at him down the road. The other star of the class was Messiah Delhomme, who is from Newport News, Virginia, Bad News, Virginia, same place as Allen Iverson, Michael Vick. He's had blocked punts the last couple of years. I think Zaire Mathis blocked the field goal as well. So you see these guys making plays on special teams. It seems like Loxley's really just getting explosive athletes. If they might have all right, Malik Washington, maybe he's not as polished as some of the top 3 quarterbacks. He was a high-ranked guy. Maybe the polish knocked him down a little bit. Okay, well, we'll take the athlete. Zaire Mathis made the size, like you said. He's playing some tight end. He's lanky. Mentioned you compared to Johnny Wilson, right, in terms of his frame, but it didn't matter. He's making plays, almost like a Jared Verse early in his career, right? In terms of before what he became, and the way he came on. This guy's 18. Jared Verse, by the time he got to FSU, was already a full-grown man. So who knows where this guy's body will go? Then Delhomme blocking kicks. It just seems like Stewart, the smaller guy, right, with Sidney, he's a smaller guy but explosive. It just seems like Loxley's over-indexing on terms of on athletes, and it's paying off for him.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't realize like what caliber of athlete Washington was. I was looking at his rushing numbers for this year, and they've not used him much in that capacity. 15 carries, 65 yards, only 2 missed tackles forced. But yeah, that's some pretty elite testing, and obviously the basketball stuff is really good. He 17-8, I think it says he averaged his junior year in that impressive area. Yeah, we talked about Mathis and how he still needs to add weight. I'm looking here, 35-inch arms and a near 6'10" wingspan. So he's got the frame to hold the weight. He just needs to add the weight. He's lanky. This is kind of a weird observation, but he's got like a I don't know, like a big head. I don't.
Yeah, no, he's a big framed looking kid. He doesn't. He's just gonna. He hasn't added the weight yet. It's gonna come. I think he won't have an issue with it. He's just not at that point yet, and it doesn't matter. So, bright future. Appreciate the support, Lord Bacon's in there. He says, I'm from the DMV area with a lot of good high school athletes. The area is very underrated. I think very underrated for football in particular, because we know basketball. We know lacrosse, too. They're good at that as well. So we put a ton of basketball athletes in the NBA. That's a fact. I mean, Kevin Durant, the Michael Beasleys of the world. He was the star when I was living out there in that area. I lived in that area for a while. And basketball was their thing. But their football teams, not even at the breadth of great teams in that area, like in Texas or Florida, but the teams that are good in that area are all-star teams. And he was able to win a lot of games here at the high school level.
Wonder, just looking at Malik Washington and his early success, guys, like, and the way that if you just go look back and look at these top 10 quarterback lists per year, how many guys that end up busting because of whatever reason. Do you see a trend of more top-rated guys like this? Because he was a top 5 quarterback on 247, saying, you know what, let me go to a mid to lower tier, because I think that's what we can call Maryland right now.
At the Power 4 level, yeah.
At the Power 4 level, a guy who's a top 5, top 10 quarterback like him, who says, let me go to a place I know I can step in. They're going to give me some. I may not have the perfect situation. You're not stepping in and not going to be playing for a top 10 team right away. But let me go somewhere that they're going to give me the keys. They're going to trust me. They're going to give me some guys that I also, believe in their abilities around me, and go over there and play for a year or two. If it doesn't work out there, you can chalk it up to, hey, we didn't have the best situation around me. Because if you go to a Texas, if you go to a Georgia and it doesn't work out there, yeah, you're still going to get a look at one of these other schools that we're talking about. But why not go get that early experience here? Some guys are going to want to go to the name program if they are being recruited that way. I just wonder if this is something that we start to see with the way that these top 10 programs are going after veteran guys in the portal.
Yeah, I think we saw it with, watch this, Jaron Kiawe Sungapolatele.
There we go.
You're going to be the ringer for that from now on.
Yep. I have a tab pulled up with these two guys on the news in California going through a pronunciation guide. But yeah, so he leaves Oregon, goes back to Cal where he was formerly committed, and ultimately I think that's probably the right move. And we've seen also at Oregon, we've seen that maybe backfire for guys like Dante Moore, and he decided, I'm going to go learn behind a guy. I think it depends on the player, but I do think this is probably a good idea. Just get the reps in a not low pressure situation, but look, man, like Maryland and Cal fans are just excited to have a quarterback who, maybe they leave, but potentially can be your guy for the next couple of years, is getting attention on the national landscape. Yeah, we saw it with CJ Bailey last year, although he was underrated as a recruit, but they're getting attention on the national landscape. If they mess up, if Jaron Kiawe, I'm not doing it again, throws 3 picks against San Diego State and they lose 28-0 at the middle of the night, maybe a few people are going to talk about that. But if he does that at Oregon, if he had to start for Dante Moore for whatever reason, that can crush a kid's confidence, So I think this is probably something we're going to see more of. And I think it's probably a good decision. It's obviously worked out well so far for Malik Washington.
Yeah, so I'm going to get into that more. I think it's a great point by you, Pete, which is, Ty Simpson maybe is the exception to this because he stuck with it and it's paying off for him down the road. But I really think reps are the most important thing for a quarterback when we talk about NFL, just being that real big-time player. And look, if you need to transfer up, you can transfer up after you've already played at these schools and play that big-time,
Yeah, but Cal's going to try to do – Cal is about to try to empty the truck for him. So it's
either way,
it's win-win.
Yeah. And if you look, I just pulled up right here as you see on the screen. I like to use draft history to kind of understand trends of drafts, et cetera, and have it all kind of in front of you, right, by position. So here's quarterback. So if you look, last year, Cam Ward, number 1 pick. He was a true freshman starter for Incarnate Word.
Yep.
You don't get more off the map when it comes to NFL draft than that, but he started as a true freshman. That set him up. Jackson Dart, who we're looking at here, he started as a true freshman for USC. People forget that. Not the whole year, but he got significant reps at USC. Going down here, Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix are the two I highlight in that 2024 class, because in this big mix of players, they're the two best ones early. And those guys are the most experienced college football players ever because they started as true freshmen and then they had the COVID year.
Well, really, Cam Ward and Jackson Dart have pretty high level experience in college football history as well. Those guys played for 5 years as starters.
100%. Now, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Richardson, maybe less reps, but I think they probably could have used more reps in college. Maybe not, but certainly Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson had a tough time. Bryce Young he waited a year. Kenny Pickett, you go further down the line, redshirt freshman starter for Pitt. I remember because he beat the Miami Hurricanes in 2017, a team that was undefeated at the time, to number 2 in the country. So he played early at a smaller school. And again, you just kind of go down. Some of the guys who didn't make it, Trey Lance, lack of experience, right? Lack of reps for Trey Lance. He's getting his reps now in the NFL. He might end up being a good player, but it's delayed. So all that to say, I just think getting experience at quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, who was not a first-round pick, but the third-round pick, he certainly had a lot of experience.
Yep.
That to me is critical when it comes down to getting ready to play quarterback, not only in college, but at the next level. And it's Fernando Mendoza, who Don Vaughn mentioned here, probably the projected, at least right now, looks like maybe the first pick at quarterback. We'll see how that develops.
Shout out to Nick Rolovich, also on staff, who has done a great job over there at Cal, former Washington State head coach. Had some issues with the school. I think during COVID refused to get vaccinated and got fired because of it. But he's working himself back into the mix, man. I've heard a ton of great things from NFL people about him. So keep him on the radar with some of these job openings now. I'm not saying it'll be, a big P4 job, but I think he deserves to be back in the mix. So,
well, I mean, if he does take a step up, I think that could be a very important factor. I personally am of the party. I think Jaron's going to return. It sounds Cal fans and media just seem overwhelmingly confident in something that they should not be confident in. But what do they know? What do they know, man? Like, do they have like a secret bag of money hidden in some room that's like, keep locked away until we have to pay Jaron? I don't know, but if he leaves, will he follow?
I think if you're the family, also you have to say, well, he's had an amazing first year here so far. Like, he's on the radar. Like, maybe we play out another year. Like, if the trajectory keeps going, then like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. In my opinion, especially with a quarterback, such a delicate position, then there's a real argument for him to stay there another year. But he plays it out another year there. It's not looking like it was, at least the way that the potential was showing this year. Then maybe next year. But yeah, I think that probably has to play into it. And look, like I said, you have to think they're about to make him an unprecedented offer to stay there.
So interesting observation, just before we get off Malik Washington, that this was something that Joe Burrow said on a podcast, and I keep coming back to, which is Joe Burrow, basketball player, by the way, Malik Washington. He said that the guys that really excel at the NFL level are guys that had to carry their teams, which, Alabama, Clemson, when they were rolling, some of these other, you don't have to carry your team as much, even if you're an excellent player on those programs, Ohio State every year. So he made the comment, he goes, the best guys in the NFL are guys that had to carry their team because they learn how to just do everything and really elevate their game. And then when you put them on a better team, they do well. By the way, Marcus, appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for your support with everything. I see you at the look-in. But he made that observation. I said, okay, so now I'm pulling this up right now, Fink. This is the QBR leaders, and I just wanted to pick something just I could grab a hold of. It's obviously, this is not a list of the best quarterbacks necessarily, but you look at it. Daniel Jones, Duke, he had to carry the team. Dak Prescott, Mississippi State, he had to carry the team. Sam Darnold, USC, at a time when USC had some holes, he carried the team. Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech obviously carried the team. Lamar Jackson, who carried the team more than him. Jared Goff, you think of him as a game managing quarterback, but he was at Cal when Cal really wasn't that good, and he was 100%. The best player by far. Drake May on an average at UNC team. He was basically the star of the show. Baker Mayfield, good team for sure, but they scored the other team scored so many points. It was like Cam Ward. He had good players around him, but he still had to carry 100% because they had to score every drive. Jordan Love at Utah State. Herbert maybe at Oregon, you could say he had a good team, Stroud, et cetera. But, I mean, Josh Allen, certainly a guy that carried his team at Wyoming. So I see what Burrow is saying there, that like what the experience Malik Washington is getting, not just playing, but being like, hey, here's the ball. You're a guy, win it for us. That's got to help him, Pete, I think. Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, I think we'll see. It's an interesting case study that we can look at now in the next couple of years. And I think maybe another topic to look at, maybe some of the QBs, where they're headed in this class for next season, is see kind of if any of those decisions have been made. We'll look a little bit deeper into this topic.
Over 1,700 on Group Chat Sports. Like and subscribe. So right now we're streaming on CanesInSight, but you go to just YouTube, Group Chat Sports, subscribe. You get all of the content. All these segments get cut up by topic. You'll get the whole show on there as well, and you'll get just shorts. I know Clay's got some content coming up where you'll be seeing just things happening in college football that you might not see on the front page of ESPN, but you as a college football maniac want to hear about. And a lot of stuff that's you might hear about it first here, and then it becomes a big story later when some of these guys blow up and become the stars of college football. Lord Bacon and saying Malik Washington, Miami. I don't know. I'm sure they'll try. Between him and JKS, I'll let Clay do the pronunciation better than me. But those guys are going to be paid by somebody, whether it's a team like Miami that's going to need a quarterback next year and has been active in that market, or Georgia. Maybe who knows if Georgia does it? They don't have a good season.
Doesn't Maryland have Under Armour money? Do they not have Under Armour money? Like,
how do we think they got Ely?
Yeah,
if you're ever going to pay a kid, this is the kid to pay.
This is the one, right? So listen, every school has someone. Every school has that one person they can tap into, right? This is the time for Maryland and Cal to do just that.
Here, I'll tell you about a team that is searching for a new quarterback next year, who is very active in the regions that we just discussed with Maryland. And it's not only looking for a quarterback next year, most likely, but it's also looking for a coach. And that's the Penn State Nittany Lions. So, Fink, there's been a lot of talk about Franklin in general. I'll let everybody else talk about it. My personal opinion is, this was a really, really good coach. And more than anything else, I think with Franklin and Pete, chime in as well, this is one of the best evaluators I think that we've had in college football for a while. Since 2018, and this stat blew my mind with Penn State. 2018, not that long ago. 8 first-round picks, including some of the biggest, highest picks you've ever seen. And on top of those 8 first-round picks, 10 second-round picks. Forget about all the other guys that got drafted. So this was a elite NFL factory in Penn State. And naturally, when the coach gets fired or leaves or whatever, middle of the season, a lot of teams' fans do exactly what we're doing right now. They pull up the commitment list for that outgoing coach. So, and whoever wants to take it, what are we looking at here on Penn State's commitment list that jumps out that they're going to need to keep for the next coach, and that other teams are going to try to swoop in on?
I'll let you take the tape.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Pennsylvania guys, so that's something to monitor. I don't know how many of these guys are planning or considering decommitments, but there's some high-end talent here. So you've got Kevin Brown. He's like a true offensive tackle type, I think. Really, like, you kind of can see it in the picture there. I had to go look at his Instagram to verify, but like, no, this guy is not fat at all. Like, he looks like a tight end or something. So he does need to add some weight, but that's like one of the more high-end offensive tackles in the country. number 4 offensive tackle in the country per the composite. He's got Alabama going after him, Auburn, Boston College, Florida. So he's got options, but I think probably the top guy that teams are going to have their eye on that seems somewhat attainable. I don't know the backstory on all these Pennsylvania kids, but is their quarterback too. And yeah, we're watching here. I mean, everybody's going to want Kevin Brown, I think.
Wrestler
that's
too, by the way. You tell multi-sport kids, he's a wrestler, which Pennsylvania, they got some rugged wrestlers. Home state of Kurt Angle, the one and only gold medalist. But yeah, so he's got the wrestling background, and obviously, you see the aggressiveness and the frame.
And this is one game highlights, by the way. This is not a season.
410-pound bench, 610-pound back squat. I don't even know when they put that on the 247 profile, but those could be old numbers by now. His dad played O-line at West Virginia and spent some time with the Steelers, which is kind of cool, stay in the area. But yeah, this is like a legit player. He got some offers from Notre Dame, Tennessee, Georgia early this spring. So there's going to be a lot of interest in this guy. But I think probably just as an outside perspective, the most attainable guy is most likely Troy Hoon, their quarterback. And he's been committed, like many quarterbacks in the country have, for over a year now to Penn State. But he's from San Marcos, California. Composite top 20 quarterback. 247 has him as a top 15 guy. What's keeping him over here on the East Coast? You know, you've got a lot of enticing teams out there on the West Coast that I'm sure could still use a quarterback in their class. I mean, shoot, Cal could use a quarterback to back up.
Man, I was gonna say maybe when JKS transfers somewhere else, this could be an enticing option for him.
Yeah. So I haven't checked out his film, but 6'4.5", 215. I had a pretty good. He's been playing since he was a sophomore. Doesn't seem like a multi-sport guy, but yeah, it just seems like a high floor generally player. And I wonder if he has any reason to stick over here with Penn State. Obviously, he hasn't decommitted yet, so maybe. But I think there's probably another guy that teams are going to be watching for. And then I watched. I did watch a few
up here. So
yeah. Well, let's stay on it.
We can watch him.
Don Vaughn's saying UCLA should call Nico, not guaranteed to stay. That's true, and also
idea.
You know he go pro soon. Southern California quarterback, which I'll be honest, you know, is not my favorite area for quarterbacks these days. I know CJ Stroud, probably your best South California quarterback of recent vintage, but typically you find North and Central California quarterbacks tend to have more success for whatever reason. Maybe it's just a trend, but you know, seems like your typical pocket California quarterback, well schooled. A lot of these California QBs get a lot of training early. There's a lot of quarterback trainers out there. You can train year round. Not as many multi-sport kids. I know CJ Stroud was a multi-sport kid. He has the whole multi-sport workout before his games. But here you see again, just clean.
Everything's
clean
in the
footwork.
Pocket though. I don't see anything. I don't see the dynamic stuff. I mean, look, he was going into Penn State. I mean, Aller's there now. I don't think any of us are calling Aller dynamic either. But I mean, he looks good. I don't see the same sort of like when we're talking about JKS a lot here, but like when we did a video about him on this page, we were blown away by the arm talent.
And movement stuff too. He had like different angles.
Yeah, personally, I'm seeing a big kid who has looks like he has a good arm, can throw the ball downfield a little bit, but I mean, everything's operating within the pocket, which is fine, but I don't know that he's a day one player.
Oh, definitely not. I don't think so either. But that's not exactly an athlete, but I can't really tell how strong the arm is. So like, is that something that can be a difference maker? But not really anything else jumping out as like dominant traits. Definitely get some Aller vibes.
I do think the arm. I mean, I'm seeing some arm strength here on some of these.
And he's so big that like I think he's one of those guys that it's just like an effort. Like he doesn't have to like really wind it up to get it. I mean, he has a pretty long release. It looks like, but I'm saying like it's kind of an effortless thing for him. It's just going. He's big, so I don't know that it jumps off his hand the same way, but it's getting there. Nice.
The arm's not my concern. I mean, and Aller's arm's not the concern either. I think that is this. You see why he went to Penn State, why Penn State went across the country to get a player like him. He just is that kind of guy. And this class, to me, just looking at some of these highlights and the backgrounds of some of these kids, it's very much a Penn State class. This guy looks like Aller. Some of these defensive players look like the kind of guys that Franklin likes to get. This has been a program, and this is honestly, to me, if I'm and I don't work in one of these college front offices, I guess we'll call them front offices, recruiting departments, I like to focus on testing numbers, multi-sport, just physical upside. I think Penn State's done that. They've never had top 5 type classes, not consistently like some of these other programs, but their NFL output is equivalent or in many cases superior to these top 5 classes because they just get these freaks. And they go to the combine, and then think about it, Abdul Carter, Micah Parsons, some of the guys they've had come through there are just freaks of nature, and they show in the combine. So quarterback's different, and as Lord Baconton says, again, appreciate you, says safe to say their quarterback recruiting is top tier. I mean, we've seen it, right? But other positions, yes. And I think you see that when you look at this Penn State commitment list. It's just they look like Penn State kind of players, and now it's a matter of where do they fit your program? Is someone looking for a big quarterback like this? I think from the Penn State side, let's see who the new coach is, where they try to keep Troy Hune. There's going to be like most quarterbacks are locked into their programs, but with all these openings across the country, I could see guys kind of freeing up different places because that's how it goes when there's a new coach. New guys come on the market, guys move around. Your quarterback decommits, so you try to look at this guy. So it's going to be a lot about fit, I think, here. If I'm Penn State, who knows who the next coach is going to be? But, man, if you look at who they had the most success with, it was Trey McSorley, who was a kid out of Virginia. I think it was a 3-star out of Virginia.
It was a Trace, right? Trace McSorley.
Sorry, Trace McSorley.
Trace, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. But he was a 3-star out of Virginia. I remember when he came out.
He was an athlete.
He was an athlete. I think a lot of schools wanted him.
I think he tested as a receiver at the combine, or maybe it was a safety. He tested as something else also at the combine.
But I'm saying when he was out of high school, they thought he was a safety.
But I'm saying even after having been a successful
after a successful career at Penn State.
They drafted him, right, to back up Lamar.
They did.
Yeah, so that to me, and that's where they've had the most success. Penn State, I think that direction, maybe they want to go more in that direction as opposed to kind of doing what they've done without success. But switching past quarterback, Clay, who else has caught your attention on this commitment list?
Yeah, honestly, nobody else really in the 2026 class because I just don't know what to do with some of these Pennsylvania kids. I don't know how possible it is. And a lot of them have been committed for a long time as well and didn't decommit immediately when they heard the news. Like I've got Messiah Mickens here listed. He's the number 161 player in the country, number 13 running back from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He's been committed for over 2 years.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that one. Matt Sieg is another safety from McDonald, Pennsylvania. He's been committed for a year. So I kind of wonder, unless they just hate the new coaching hire for whatever reason, are these guys even ever going to leave?
Well, and there's also, to me, Clay, just looking at the list, because we had some guys there that are like top 300 type guys on our short list, but just looking at the full list on 247, like I'm more interested in the bottom half of their board where you're looking at some of these 3-stars. Like Miami, for example, just offered a defensive lineman, Isaac Chukwuora from Delaware. 3-star recruit, number 1 player in the state, but like his offer list was, the other offers were NC State, West Virginia, right, that I see at the top of the profile. Does a Miami coming in with the national, buzz that they have right now? It's obviously a way different situation than Penn State, but like, do you see some guys who were 3-stars, in the rankings? But again, you go watch Isaac Chukwuora's tape, and it does not look like a 3-star prospect. And I think a lot of other schools and recruiting departments are saying, if James Franklin and them like this kid, then this is not a bad take for us. So on top of just the top 300 type prospects, it'll be interesting to see which guys come from the bottom of the class and end up, somewhere else.
Almost 1,800 on. I'll tell you, I do want to talk about one guy that we don't know if he's up for grabs, but he is listening to other schools. I think Notre Dame maybe is a guy to watch, or is a school to watch with this guy. But I love the player, and he's the highest rated player in the class, so obviously he's going to get attention. But to me, this is the guy, is Matt Sieg. So we'll pull up his highlights here. so many boxes get checked with this guy right away. Safety recruit, but you're seeing him play quarterback, and you say 5'11" and a half verified, 190. So the size is more than what you need, or is at least what you need. He was extremely productive, or is extremely productive at quarterback. 63 total touchdowns, all phases. The stats are off the charts as you watch these highlights. 32-4 as a starter. Great basketball player, great baseball player, 6'1" high jump.
Great track runner too.
Yeah, he's 10'9", and he won a gold in the 4x1, not Olympic gold, but state gold. But again, baseball and basketball, and then you watch him on the field, and he's playing quarterback, man, and making plays. He's a winner. Here you see him on defense. You don't have to project him on defense. You could see him on defense right here. I mean, there you see him. He's tracking him all the way down.
Yeah.
If this guy goes to Notre Dame, you know he is going to be, and maybe who knows, because I just don't know what Penn State's going to be, so it's hard to project there. But if you put this guy in Marcus Freeman's system, I think he's going to be one of those guys that we're talking about maybe as like a day one type player, because he just fits like a glove in what Notre Dame wants to do. And I'm extremely, extremely high on what he brings to the table. You see him turn his hips, no problem. I mean, he's an aware. I mean, look at that. That is high level awareness for a guy who really made his name as a quarterback. Baseball player, basketball player, you expect him to have good ball skills. So speed check, instincts check, production check, size is good enough, ball skills, multi-sport, all that. See him. There you go, timing it up. I mean, I think this guy he's ranked as I think the number 80 player in the country according to 247, much lower on the composite 173. I'm more on the 247 side of things.
I think so
guy.
too.
I think he's a high level dude.
Yeah, 63 total touchdowns as a sophomore, leading his school to their first WPIAL championship when he was a sophomore. He's 32-4 as a starter. So, you know, we were talking about carrying the team. This is he might just be carrying the athletics program for his high school, playing all four sports, all three phases on the football field. So I would definitely agree with you. I lean more towards 247's evaluation here. This seems like a top 100 guy pretty easily.
Look at that. Man. He's looking for the lateral.
Yeah.
Western PA, so the high level of football period. This is one, just again, he's the highest rated guy, so I'm not exactly going on a limb. At least by 247, he's the highest rated guy. But this to me is he's talking to other programs. He's at the Penn State, he loves Penn State. He's from Western PA. But man, I'm surprised he doesn't have more interest. Notre Dame was the biggest school that kind of jumped in when he became available. If I'm one of these big Southern schools, I'm still looking at this guy just because of the athleticism. Safety's a hard position to project, but do it all guys, I think, tend to fit better because you trust their instincts more and their just overall vision when they do things like this.
Yeah, this is a very good player and just seems like one of those guys that would be in the Notre Dame secondary for sure. Paired next to like a 6'5" safety, Kyle Hamilton or whoever the guy is they got last class. I was a big fan of him. But one other guy I will give a shout out to, I was looking through, forgot I watched him. He's been on campus at FSU, is Marlon Bright, the offensive tackle from New Jersey. He has been committed since July 5th, so not super long term there. He's seemed very high IQ. They have played him at different positions like every year that he's been in high school on the offensive line. Not a like spectacular athlete, not a spectacular frame. I think he's a 4-star on the composite, 88 grade by 247 Sports, which is a 3-star. I'd probably give him like an 89, so like a high 3-star. But this is a good football player. Definitely a type that you just want to get in your offensive line room when you're taking swings at the position.
Yeah, 6'7", 4.1 GPA. Wayne, New Jersey. This is like North New Jersey. This is like you're close to New York, basically. But yeah, he's got a good looking frame. Lower body's there. I just like his stance. I mean, one thing I've learned from just being around offensive line coaches is they put a lot more stance in things like, or a lot more weight in things like your stance than the average fan. Not because of the coaching about it. It's more about just your flexibility. You know, your ability to bend
I want to say you pop out of it.
Yeah. And you see it here. I like what I'm seeing here. I like the length. Again, typical kind of Penn State type of guy. I can see this. Penn State gets these kind of guys, and by the time they're sophomores, maybe redshirt sophomores, they're starting and they're big and they're athletic. Again, good knee bend there, good level of competition. There's a North New Jersey is an area where I think they go everywhere. Penn State does well there, but I mean, even teams like Miami have done well there historically. Alabama will go up there to get a guy like Minka Fitzpatrick. So teams go up to this area. So this could be an interesting recruitment to watch. You mentioned FSU being in there. They're another team where who knows where that direction that goes. So I think recruiting in general, man, this season is going to be pretty interesting because of the unprecedented coaching upheaval that people are projecting and that we've already seen happen. We'll be covering all that on Group Chat Sports. So follow Group Chat Sports because we'll be covering not only the coaching changes, but also where all these players are going to go, where these guys are going in the portal. And Pete, I mean, there's a lot of teams that are going to be in the same situation as Penn State is, where their commitment list is getting rated.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at Florida here coming up, potentially. Obviously, Clay, you're on with us, but Florida State, that could be a moving target.
They lose to
there
Stanford this weekend. I don't know if Norvell's getting back on the plane, to be honest.
So I mean, you got two right there that are prominent, as we understand. And we think about this one way. We think about it in the terms of, hey, who are they going to lose? I also think about it as Lane Kiffin goes to Florida. Ole Miss's commitment list is getting rated. So it's more about the coach that replaces them, because hey, we're talking about Penn State a lot here. If he gets hired by Florida or Florida State, then do a few of these guys go down with him? I think I would say yes. But that stuff will be sorted out here in the coming weeks and months, right?
Michigan and Oklahoma from Canes Cat. Michigan, I'm not sure of, although I heard a couple of
Oklahoma was a weird one. Not weird. They have a very tough schedule here, but after the 5-0, basically it's the 5-0 start. It sounds like they really don't care just because they lost to Texas, and Venables hasn't gotten that signature win, so to speak. I mean, they beat Michigan, but I guess that's not a signature enough win, right?
Yeah, but look at Oklahoma's schedule. I mean,
no, it's tough move coming.
So they're at South Carolina going against Lenore Sellers.
That's fine.
Who could beat you?
No, they could lose that game, but I'm saying it's the rest of the schedule.
And then you got Ole Miss at Tennessee, at Alabama versus Missouri, at LSU. Let's say you split those. And it's a 4-loss season. And if you're Venables, you've been there a minute. This is your team. Is that enough to keep your job? I don't know. And that's if they split. I'm not sure they split that.
I think the issue really comes down to the narrative progression throughout this season. They start off kings of the world, Matier's the Heisman favorite, obviously gets his injury, but they're able to battle through that, stay undefeated. The team looked good, and then you put so much stock into this Red River rivalry as an Oklahoma fan, and to see them come out and play the way that they did, it's just got to be tough for him to get past that, I think.
So, Fig, before we let you go, we got a question from Canes Cat that he's been pounding it, and he wants you to answer, which is he wants to know about the best player in Miami Lakes, which is Daryl Trey Bell, who's, I believe, an FSU commit. And he says Alabama's creeping around there. He says teams are creeping around on Trey Bell. So he wants to know best player in Goldman history, best player in Miami Lakes. Which again, for those who are watching this, who are not local, these are not areas where you get a lot of football players. Here, it is not like the rest of Dade County where you're seeing a lot more guys in Miami Lakes and Goldman. But this is a guy that committed to FSU, Alabama Lurkin. What are you seeing with Trey Bell?
I'm going to be honest, man. I do not think he's going to flip regardless of what happens. This is like an unbelievably loyal kid in a day and age where you don't really see that ever. That was cool. Like some
that was cool. I was going to say, what are those analytics?
Yeah. Okay. Especially at a school like this. But yeah, so there's been articles written. His family are FSU fans. He's been committed to FSU for over 2 years now. And he got recruited to attend various other high schools many years in a row now. And he's stayed true to his program. He's very prideful in the fact that they have not had a player like him and have not had success like they've had with him on their team. I think, unless obviously anything can happen, I do think there's probably a pretty good chance he remains at FSU. But I'm a big fan of Trey Bell. He kind of, he plays both ways. He's probably a safety at the next level, in my opinion. but FSU likes him as a receiver.
Highlights. These are some highlights against D's high school there.
Yeah,
not this one. The one before, the one that looks like the Michigan Helmets. But yeah, he looks good to me, man. Got some good speed. I think if FSU can keep this guy, this is a good pickup for them.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's very versatile. He could be corner, safety, receiver. It's really just a matter of wherever you want to put him and what you think is the best fit for him long term. I would probably have him right around where the composite is. He's 348th nationally. He's an 88 grade from 247, so that's the number 39 safety, whereas he's 27th ranked safety in the composite. I think I would definitely have this as a 4-star player. I love Trey Bell. I think he's kind of a breath of fresh air in this recruiting landscape, to be honest. So you should enjoy watching him while you can, because he seems like a great dude and obviously an even better player. So
yeah, a lot of highlights. Even more highlights against my alma mater a couple plays ago, but he changes direction really well. That's the thing that jumps out to me. Some of these safeties can be tight. That's
why special teams play like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
big indicator.
A lot of special teams
coming up and hitting guys. Where does your rank in FSU's class for you, assuming no one leaves?
Ooh, let's see. Okay, I would not take him above Chauncey Kennan, Devin Carter, Ernest Rankin, Xavier Tiller, Isaiah Williams. Probably it might be like 7. I'm not a huge fan of any of the receiver commits they have. I guess maybe Jason Lopez, but who knows if he's even going to play football. I think I'd probably have him 7, and that is not where. I'm just saying, man. That kid's a hooper.
Drop that on us.
That's a hooper, man. I have no inside information on that, but Laux loves that kid. Yeah, no. He's still committed for both, but Laux is going to fight to get that kid on his team. So we'll see. We'll see which way that goes. I really honestly have no clue. But I mean, if they make a coaching change, I'm sure the new coach will still be interested, but he'd probably stick with basketball. But yeah, Chauncey Kennan, Ernest Rankins, Devin Carter, Xavier Tiller, Isaiah Williams, Jay Timmons, who he might flip to Ohio State any day now. And then I'd probably put Trey Bell as the 7th best player, and he is not ranked as such. So I think this is probably the guy.
Long highlights for the pride of Miami Lakes, man. He is making play after play after play. So shout out to Trey Bell. Shout out to you, Clay Fink, Peter. Remember, like and subscribe to Group Chat Sports. We get covering all this movement, not just the coaches, the players, the recruits, all the portal stuff, in and out. When you have upheaval, it's a lot to keep track of. You're trying to focus on your team and then still keep an eye on eEarn and everything else. Who might impact your team? Who might be on the market? Group Chat Sports, like and subscribe. We'll be covering that all year round, portal season, recruiting season, and now on Group Chat Sports.
See you guys later.
See ya.